Chapter
NK
61, Comfort. Van Nan said offhand, begin. The great owner blinked and asked, no need to discuss tactics first? Van Nan waved and answered, no fuss, we have cleared the secret dungeon twice before and have combat experience, just call the monsters out. So the great owner followed suit. To then reminded, old rules, and held his position, for now ordinary mobs do not need his hand. A pack of 20 wild wolves rushed in quickly. The beast summoner threw a skynet and immediately trapped several wolves. Vang Veen raised his staff and cast Meteor, and the pack lost nearly half of their health in an instant. Van Nan then added a hailstorm and the wolves were finished. Van Nan's normal attacks now deal 70 to 73 points, and with skill damage one hailstorm cleared the wolves down to half health and beyond. The archer muttered, do I imagine support is stronger than in the arena? The mage agreed, not an illusion, I feel the same. The great owner smiled wryly, do you see? Support killed them all. The mage added, this shows support controls the team, and sighed, no wonder the guild forces new members to sign pacts, without it a new member will betray sooner or later. The archer was moved, support and priest are very clever, they planned this. The great owner murmured, both force and mind stand at the tower's peak, where do the others survive? The three exchanged glances inside. The second wave of bats was also passed with ease. Before the third wave, to then moved to the arrow tower and stood ready. Ko Van Nak tightened his bow. Vang Veen hesitated, then asked Van Nan, if the famous players agree to trade incoming Tin Tien gear, will the boss swap unused gear to them? Van Nan admitted, I thought of that, but persuading them will be hard. Vang Veen was silent, recalling how the great owner eyed traders before. After a long pause Vang Veen said, try once, if the trade succeeds both sides gain, more Tin Tien gear helps us finish full sets and grow power. He added, giving in used gear raises the player's baseline, sacrificial skills need gear but not only best items, many junk pieces may work similarly. Van Nan agreed, go then, I await good news. Compared to most poor players, the famous players are kinder, and if they obtain full gear the protection cards become more valuable, but most players remain poor and collecting a full 6-piece set is rare. Thinking further the idea multiplied in Van Nan's head. She murmured, a loyal junior is more reassuring than a heartless one. The archer mocked the mage, what is this? The great owner inhaled and stood ready, wait and you will know. Vang Veen returned to his old fellows and said plainly, I have a proposal. The great owner asked, what is it? The archer whispered, are you crazy? Who gifts legendary gear away? Vang Veen said, I judge this trade benefits the famous players more, you may refuse. The mage worried, if we refuse will the three of us escape the dungeon safely? Vang Veen solemnly assured, you will be safe, this is only a proposal. The archer thought the great owner was bewitched. The great owner pondered but nodded, okay. The archer was speechless. The great owner said seriously, the mage will not betray us, I trust you once. Vang Veen asked why. The great owner sighed and explained he misjudged before and now sees the truth, he cannot hold Vang Veen. Vang Veen read his sincerity and felt relief. The great owner instructed, negotiate fair terms with support. The mage hesitated, then left without delay. The archer fretted, he still seems angry, what now? The great owner brushed it off, we will talk later. He already knew the relationship had been wounded. Vang Veen returned and told support all was settled. Van Nan was surprised, they really agreed to trade Tin Tien gear? Vang Veen nodded, the great owner verbally agreed. Van Nan rejoiced, I knew famous players differ, look at their insight. Vang Veen proposed a rate, 3 Tin Tien pieces for 10 normal pieces, okay? Van Nan accepted at once, 10 is fine. Her inventory held many unsellable items, and without sacrificial skills she would have given freely to the poor. She drew 10 items and added extra tools for goodwill. Vang Veen warned, payment is settled, when clearing remember to pay your share, do not stiff us. The three were amazed, 10 pieces? The archer could not believe it. The mage was dizzy, not only gear, also many tools. The great owner quickly regained composure and said, even if support and priest are strong, they cannot possess so many items casually. Chapter 62, The Deal. The guildmaster paused and only muttered, if it feels off then take your time and think. With that he walked away. There is something wrong here. The mage thought to himself. The archer snapped, stop overthinking, you know how vicious those two beasts are, best not provoke them. You fear they will purge dissenters. The archer chuckled and shot back, what else, force supporters to stay and keep the opposers, would that not be brain dead? The mage opened his mouth yet no words came. Kneel and live or oppose and die, those atop the food chain are all like that. The archer said darkly. The archer then froze, since Red Beauty's annihilation he had hardly heard that name and had almost forgotten her. You mean? The mage dared not finish, hinting the support killed to snatch skills. Not certain. The guildmaster hedged, before, Chu Hu had a talent not a passive, with good fortune the support might also hold a luck king skill. Silence fell. The mage forced out, we cannot beat them in force or in schemes, aside from yielding there seems no way. The archer added, worse, the support outclasses Chu Hu by who knows how many times, back then her team would never let her solo all monsters, and with her strength she could not kill as many as the support, now the support even has a luck buff, I fear the rest are done. The third assault ended swiftly. The fourth wave failed miserably. In the fifth the boss was trampled without mercy. The three from Famous Hall watched Star Heaven clear the dungeon, expressionless but full of sighs. Both are 5-member guilds, why such a gap? The archer sighed. Difference between a fresh newbie and a max-level demigod. The mage sneered. The guildmaster stared at Vang Veen, face complicated, who knew after leaving us the warlock would be this strong. Skills rotated in order and timing was razor sharp. Looks like attributes were raised and gear improved, more importantly the skill count is huge and varied. The mage analyzed, from the side you see his global read, in any case he fires the right skill like instinct, no hesitation, sometimes pairing the archer for single target burst to push mobs near death, sometimes going area, sometimes using bind to lock elites, he answers as naturally as breathing, how does he handle all fronts at once? No idea. The guildmaster sighed again, he had thought himself no fool yet now saw that next to Vang Veen his command and coordination lagged far. In netgame terms he is captain sets team direction while Vang Veen masters tactics to answer by the dungeon state, when danger rises his bind and ranged eyes catch and stop it, two roles differ yet worked well, only he failed to value Vang Veen's service so the man lost heart and left. Now he must learn anew and grow fast to shoulder what Vang Veen carried from the start, his teammates must also read apt. Soon the monsters were wiped and the system droned, congratulations on clearing the secret realm dungeon, you gain 2 free attribute points and 200 merit, please exit within 15 minutes or be teleported out. Faces beamed, only to then went green and wanted to slam the loot, what is this, Star Heaven boots again? Kovan Nak's eyes shone, he waited for boots, everyone but him already had them. Chin up. Van Nan half teased, a few more secret realm clears and we can sacrifice Star Heaven boots. To then kept silent, she was certain he only ever rolled boots, he wanted to object but the last 3 runs had been boots so he lacked the spine to argue. What did you all get? Van Nan asked. Kovan Nak got Star Heaven pants, the warlock a robe, and Fatty a ring. Van Nan tossed the Star Heaven staff to the warlock, robe staff and pants, take them all for a 6-piece set. The warlock beamed and hugged the pile. To then snorted and threw the boots to the archer, Kovan Nak caught them grinning. Beside them the 3 from Famous Hall offered gear, 1 robe and 2 Star Heaven rings. By rights the archer should take 2 rings while Fatty takes a robe and 1 ring, fair enough, yet Fatty said calmly, let the archer take the robe first, I am not in a rush, with it his skill damage and MP rise. Van Nan asked, an archer can wear a robe. Before Kovan Nak could test it, to then nodded, he can. Van Nan arched a brow, clearly someone knew yet chose not to tell, now that she knew he hid things she was no longer surprised, aside from itchy fists she stayed very calm. If he can then give it to the archer. She decided. Kovan Nak grinned from ear to ear. After the split, Vang Veen had a full 6-piece Star Heaven set, Ko Van Nak had 5 pieces, Bao robe boots and 2 rings, Fatty only had boots and a ring, To then figured one more secret realm would finish the team's sets. The run is over, may we go? The guild master asked. Go on, do as you like. Van Nan said and warped away, To then nodded to the guildmaster, may your truce cards sell high. Then he left too, Ko Van Nak and Fatty followed. Vang Veen looked deeply at his little teammate then departed without a second thought, since all was said there was nothing to linger for. At last only the 3 from Famous Hall remained. Are we in such a hurry to trade truce cards with other guilds? The archer groused, how did he not know? They simply felt sharing a dungeon was awkward and made an excuse to leave. The guild master admitted to his brothers. With these 10 pieces we can arm all the boys, I meant to trade the truce cards for gear, now it seems we need not, so what should the 3 truce cards be traded for? He asked. The archer muttered, what else, we have gear and items, then potions and skill scrolls. Watching Star Heaven depart the mage side, truly top players, a casual handout equals our toil for 2 or 3 runs. Before the 4th faction war, Van Nan checked the squad's training. To the now had Close Combat Foundation Tier 2, Defense Foundation Tier 3, Footwork Foundation Tier 1, and Meditation Foundation Tier 3, in his words he either slept 8 and plotted pits or trained on the yard. Van Nan held Footwork Foundation Tier 1, Meditation Foundation Tier 3, and Ranged Foundation Tier 3, too tired to add another program. Vang Veen held Defense Foundation Tier 1, Footwork Foundation Tier 1, Meditation Foundation Tier 3, and Ranged Foundation Tier 3, after finishing her brief he self-studied more. Fatty held Meditation Foundation Tier 3 and Ranged Foundation Tier 1, and then, nothing more. Looking at the warlock into then, Van Nan recalled the top students at school, as if learning alone made them giddy. Not bad, all have finished the Advanced Meditation Foundation, our guild's self-recovery might be the highest. To then rejoiced, then inside 3 seconds issued a second order, marksman must push harder, raise Ranged Foundation to Tier 3 fast. The more he thought the more Ko Van Nak sensed danger. Tomorrow's faction war may bring any foe, rest early. Van Nan closed. At once Fatty and Ko Van Nak flushed with chicken blood excitement. Van Nan was speechless, her team loved loot more than life and would crash sooner or later. Chapter 63, 7th Instance 1. After entering the instance the first thing Van Nan did was scan the surroundings. The next second she frowned because 5 Celestial Guild players on the pure white side were expected but this terrain was odd. To then quickly assessed and rubbed his chin. A map shaped like the river character. 3 straight roads ran in parallel, the left lane was pure white's instance, the right lane was deep black's instance, and the middle was a safe zone. A light screen split the safe zone into upper and lower halves and the Celestial Guild stood in the lower half. From the start to the end there were 5 evenly spaced arrow towers. Vang Veen swept his gaze across the upper half. Deep Black has 5 players in total. A prompt appeared on everyone's watch. Main quest, before the enemy camp fails do not let any monster pass the teleport array, complete it to earn 200 merit points per player. Rules this time, while in the safe zone players cannot deal damage, while in an instance lane all players may attack you, have fun. What does that mean? Not only can allies fight but even the opposing camp can attack us. Ko Van Nak questioned life. It seems so. NK Vang Veen mused. Then who will step out of the safe zone? Ko Van Nak spat in frustration. Van Nan drew a truce card then hesitated with a helpless look. If everyone stays in safety we probably do not need the truce card. If an emergency comes I will step out to block the wave and use the card then. To then lowered his voice. Try a dual card on the Major Cross. Before the camps were far beyond attack range so no one thought of dual cards and now it might be worth a try. To then instructed. Fatty summon your pets, the rest get ready, focus the male mage in the blue robe with a mustache and that hateful face, support countdown before using the card. Van Nan nodded and complied. 3, 2, 1. When she said 1 the dual card vanished and a mechanical voice stated. You challenged player number 5946, For 3 minutes you may attack each other, a target whose health drops to 0 dies and the record is erased. Focus fire. Van Nan growled and cast lightning 5 times to erase the paper mage. The 3 juniors were baffled and Vong Veen tried lightning only to be told he was in the safe zone, so the strike had no effect. Tu then also received prompts, and when he was about to cast he saw her damage was already enough. The deep black mage had just seen the notice when 5 bolts slammed down and popped him into white light. His eyes went blank as if not understanding his death. A scroll appeared where he vanished. So he was a gifted player. Van Nan regretted. Sadly, it is in Deep Black's safe zone, so we cannot reach it. The talent scroll hovered while the Deep Black team fumed and stayed wary of Van Nan, and only after a long while did the warrior step up to pocket it. Tu then ordered. Cut the remaining archer or mage. Van Nan replied and used another duel card. The Deep Black mage finally understood why his fellow died so strangely and he shouted. The effect lasts only 3 minutes, so protect me. Before he finished, thunder crashed and he tanked 1 hit, then sprinted to the warrior. The warrior raised a great shield to cover him. A system reminder came. You attacked player number 7245. The target is in the safe zone, so the strike has no effect. Van Nan realized a duel card lets her hit only that mage. If his allies intercept, then any strike landing on them is void and stalling wastes the 3 minutes. The warrior dropped his shield to face the blast, and Tu then also got a null effect prompt. You cannot either. Van Nan sneered and hurled berserk at the mage. It was on Lax's talent, which buffs damage but carries harsh side effects, so she rarely used it, though now it fit. The mage roared with blood-red eyes, shoved the warrior aside, flung 3 skills at Van Nan, then screamed and charged like a melee fighter. In a blink he reached them, and the rock bear felt delighted because it finally could take hits for allies. The bulky bear blocked Van Nan and the fair system again nullified the strike. Van Nan smirked and a few more thunders ended the mage's in-game life. Then she addressed Deep Black calmly. Alright, we can start the camp war now. The warrior paled since their core was gone before the battle even began. Tu then eyed the wreck and muttered. Throw berserk only at enemies, do not throw it on allies. Ever since On Lak died, the talent's downside feels huge. Van Nan glanced at him. What is there to fear? I never planned to throw it on you. Tu then thought he only feared an impulsive toss. Tragic. Vong Veen judged the 3 remaining enemies and murmured. Van Nan socketed Storm Lightning in the first tower to boost attack speed and Water Wind in the second to slow targets by 40% for 5 seconds, and then she declared. Done. Fatty wanted to kneel because under the boss the round ended before starting. Tu then studied the new rules. We can enter our own lane and cannot enter the enemy safe zone. Can we enter the enemy lane? Van Nan encouraged him. Try and you will know. Tu then suspected someone sought revenge by proxy. What are you afraid of? Both mages there are dead. Half teasing and half serious, she added. Go and I will shield you and it will be safe. Tu then's face darkened. Or try another way and let the bear go. The bear grinned foolishly, unaware it was being plotted against. Van Nan insisted. The bear is a summon, and even if it passes, that does not prove a player can pass, so you should go. Why must it be me? Tu then asked. Because you are the main tank, high defense and thick health. If not you, then who? He fell silent and felt lured into being a sandbag, yet her reasoning oddly made sense. Why must we test it? He pondered painfully. Van Nan reasoned. Pretend there is a talent scroll in Deep Black's lane and go pick it up. We must clarify new rules to exploit them later. Hurry up, the wave is coming. She urged again. Dizzy, he let her push him out of the safe zone. Tu then swung his sword and easily slapped arrows aside. In the safe zone, Van Nan muttered with regret. Deep Black's strength is really poor. Ko Van Nak blanked out and thought that this must be love, though a single dog like him could not understand it. Tu then paced the lane and swatted 7 or 8 arrows and returned safely with a conclusion. You can move freely in the enemy lane. Van Nan deflated and waved that she knew. Tulin stayed speechless since the so-called research was just a pretext to trick him, and after so long she did not even shield him. Over in deep black gloom filled the air, and the archer laughed bitterly. Their warrior is too strong, and even a hit arrow gets slapped away. With only 3 of us, winning is impossible. The warrior gasped. Is this not a safe zone? How did our core die? They have a gifted player. The last man wrapped in a black cloak finally spoke. Only a gifted player can do that. What do we do? The archer passed the question to the other 2. The cloak spoke low. I will attack the pure white players and you 2 clear the instance waves. Will that work? The warrior doubted, because 5 players plus 3 summons made their headcount nearly triple, and a simple mass tactic could secure victory, not to mention their solid strength. We cannot just sit and wait for death. The cloak said, and waited for a chance. The archer sighed because he understood the plan meant treating a dying horse as a living one. Chapter 64, 7th Instance 2. Van Nan waited lazily on the side, letting her lackeys soften monsters before she reaped. To then studied the dark camp and sank into thought. On-site announcer Fatty felt uneasy, eager to help yet clearly unnecessary. Suddenly To then moved and cast lightning to kill a dark side monster. Any loot? Van Nan asked. Yes, 1 red potion. To then grinned as a new idea formed. Van Nan read him at a glance and twitched her lips. Do not tell me you want to clear 2 instances at once. Why not? To then said coolly, the enemy squad is crippled, perfect time to farm. When it becomes too heavy we can end the game anyway. Van Nan eyed him like a daredevil. You want me to fight steel in 2 instances at once? She stared as if 1 nod would earn him a knife. To then put on a solemn face. Your trial has arrived. Van Nan swung her staff like a club. To then dodged nimbly and added, just steal a bit of time, I will also help, it is on the way. Van Nan said firmly, then swap with the mage. You stay in pure white to fight, the mage goes to dark to steal. To then's face blackened. What do you mean? Face your unlucky streak, over there you may only pick trash. Van Nan said bluntly. No. To then snapped, bad luck does not erase his rights, even poor loot is still loot, such bias is shameless. Vang Veen shrank his neck and quietly retreated 2 steps. Fine, you were not going to meddle anyway, I will solo steal Dark's monsters. To then said, then dropped more lightning to help Dark kill 1 more. From afar he looked like a traitor. Van Nan said nothing. What is boss doing? Fatty gaped. Van Nan steadied morale, so we can kill more, he helps Dark hold longer. Fatty brightened, boss is wise. Wise my foot, Van Nan thought. The first time they met he schemed with his own life. Time passed and he forgot the lesson. Each camp has just over 100 left, 2 or 3 more waves will settle victory, why risk more? Early game demands ruthlessness to create advantage, late game needs stability to prevent capsizing. A slip buries a winning board. If Dark had only 1 player left then raiding there would be fine, but with 3 it is too many. Let him be. Van Nan muttered and focused on her own harvest. The Dark archer gaped. Pure white even sent a helper to kill our monsters, are they crazy? The 2 sides are life and death. The warrior saw through it, he is only here to steal, with victory secured sending 1 will not change the whole. The black cloak sighed, pity, if 1 more came our ambush chance rises. The archer probed, shall we just stop attacking? To kill a few more maybe pure white will send another to clear for us. Reasonable, try it. The warrior agreed, our 5 arrow towers already have crystal arrays, the first surge is not many. Even without outside help they could finish in time. Ha! To then sneered and also stopped, posing as if nothing profitable means no action, the rest kept farming their own side and ignored the other. When the horde passed pure white's 3rd tower the archer finally shot, but a magic shell landed first, then thunder, the nearly dead monster fell. Did you not say you would not clear for Dark? To then glanced coolly. Van Nan said lightly, if our side is already clean it is fine to clean theirs. Coward. To then scoffed. Safety first, coward then. Van Nan was unfazed, I killed 2 mages, 1 had a gift, Dark likely has a second and a third gifted, caution never hurts. What gift dares a high difficulty challenge? Tu then frowned. Van Nan had to admit he was bold, revise plan, finish our instance first, then clear Dark. Tu then thought, saying no was pointless. The warrior watched pure white helpers rapidly sweep monsters and grew grave. We did not bait them. Wait a bit longer, rasped the black cloak. They both nodded. Yet after 3 more surges pure white still always finished home then cleared Dark without exception. I agree, prepare. The black cloak inhaled, warrior, learn the mage's talent. Scroll and try to pin the horde. Okay. The warrior answered and drew out a scroll. Light flared and the horde slowed. The warrior sighed, power fell and range shrank. We take it, the archer grumbled, what hellish gift lets them kill inside a safe zone? If our core were alive we would not be passive. What are they doing, charging poems? Fatty glanced and asked curiously. Seconds later a black door opened near Pure White's third tower and 10 bull-headed fiends marched out. Minotaurs, not bad luck, the black cloak murmured, it was his talent, Hellgate. Hellgate, uncast you randomly summon demons from the deep, every 10 seconds one batch, the gate lasts at most 1 minute, each opening consumes 10 years of life, once per instance. So there is a backhand. Van Nan was not surprised and even pleased, with monsters gathered it would be wasteful not to use area skills, she promptly sacrificed gear and tossed pieces one by one. After several throws she felt wrong, dead minotaurs dropped no loot, worse another batch came from the black door, this time 10 armored riders stormed out. Trouble and no loot, Van Nan fumed. Tu then called out loudly, support keep sacrificing, everyone else focus the door. Attacked the black door, others froze but followed instinctively, under 10 bodies concentrated fire the door's health plunged, Van Nan asked nothing and kept sacrificing. To ease doubts Tu then explained, Dark is unlucky, support missed through 1 item and the door was inside the blast radius, after being hit a health bar appeared which was odd, when the second batch came I understood, this talent likely summons in groups not once, break the door fast and see what else they can do. Everyone roared and sped up. The black cloak stared as the gate was shelled, Hellgate does have counters, the summon monsters only last 2 minutes then vanish, he feared the foe would drag time, yet never imagined they would attack the gate itself, still less that the summoned horde would be wiped. Each opening costs 10 years of life, his heart bled, he slowly removed his cloak revealing a withered aging body, in truth he was only just past 30 but abusing his talent made him look like a man of 70 or 80, worse, after such a price he still could not be the final victor. Had I known this end I would have died in my original form. NK Books. Murky tears slid from his eyes. Chapter 65, The 7th Dungeon, Part 3. After clearing the dungeon mobs, Van Nan refused to waste more gear and shouted, summon monsters drop nothing, just hit as you like. The Hellgate collapsed and celestial guilds swarmed the summons. They are too strong, no comeback now. The black-cloaked one winced. The warrior was unwilling and hated that he could not rush the pure white safe zone to drag a few down with him. The archer quavered, I counted, that mage woman threw out about 20 pieces at once, how did she survive this long, where did she get so many? Black Cloak fell silent, then said slowly, she killed some gifted players and seized several talent skills. Silence fell and the archer had nothing left to say. The warrior looked toward Deep Black's instance and saw the swarm already within range of the 5th arrow tower, he shook his head, forget it. When the first foot touched the portal a machine voice sounded, game over, pure white wins, congratulations on a successful defense, dungeon complete, please exit within 15 minutes, overtime will auto-teleport you. At once all monsters vanished and 3 Deep Black players turned into white light. Wang Vin felt wistful, in truth he thought Deep Black were not weak, especially the summoner, without support deleting their core at the start and the priest spotting that door issue they might have struggled, in short they lost from bad luck meeting 2 absurd players. Kovan Naxide as well, I thought later stages meant tougher foes and harder clears, yet after joining Celestial everything became simpler. They were strong enough to counter-kill while other gifted players schemed and to gather practical talent skills. They were strong enough that recruits still joined under harsh demands, they were strong enough to gear and skill up new members, without an early lead they could never reach today. Wang Vin agreed and nodded along. She paused, then revealed, around 23 items. My hard-earned stockpile was almost emptied, only a few came from elite drops. This is not like farming normal mobs because summons give no rewards, so we must burn inventory. Without my reserves the result would be ugly. She ended, you feel the clear was easy because I carried most of the difficulty. 23 items shocked Ko Van Nak into stunned silence. Fatty once more spoke solemnly, yes, with the leader we can win in streaks and clear with ease. We must not forget her contribution and should keep awe before each victory. Ko Van Nak stayed mute and thought the fat man slacked yet flattered smoothly. We will know once we return. Van Nan said and warped back to town. The machine voice announced, before the 7th dungeon Pure White had 185 and Deep Black had 165, now Pure White has 79 and Deep Black has 60, keep pushing. Not even a full 100 left. Van Nan mused, the sides shrank unevenly but Pure White's edge grew, now Pure White led by nearly 1/3. Because the whole war stayed under control her spirits were fine afterward, she decided to stroll the market, yet the moment she hit the street she saw a huge wooden board. It read, Dreamlong Guild invites surviving lucky players of Pure White to a meetup. If you agree then come at 10 in the morning on the 3rd day after the camp war to the diner. Van Nan stopped to read and pondered why all Pure White would meet, to shore each other up, to share intel, or to discuss plans. After a moment she resolved to go watch the fun. Next morning the 5 of Celestial huddled. Van Nan handed an area control skill to the warlock and kept another for herself and then had nothing else to assign. 2 then scoffed, boards hang all over the roads, who would not know? From what I know Dreamlong has a gifted player. Ko Van Nak revealed, with 10 items you can trade for a beginner's secret realm scroll. His eyes flashed, his strength sat at 19 and he needed 1 more point for his special reward. He had hunted this tip for a long time. Van Nan said flatly, but that guild is broke and cannot pull together 10 items. Since getting her luck buff this was her first real cash squeeze. Ko Van Nak stayed eager, without 10 items we can swap truce passes for gear with others, after trading we will have enough, right? Wang Vien added, as I heard that players' talent crushes gear into essence shards, each item yields at least 10 shards and 50 shards craft a beginner scroll, attributes do not matter, only the count. Skimming half as a fee, this guy charges hard. 2 then muttered. Van Nan wanted to ask where they heard all this and why she felt like a country bumpkin knowing nothing. The archer's strength is 19 and needs the scroll to reach 20. 2 then agreed. You will put in gear then? Van Nan asked blandly. 2 then pivoted at once, we will find another way to obtain the scroll. If that fails we identify him and threaten his life to craft for free. He proposed the shameless route without pressure and Ko Van Nak nodded fiercely, the leader was decisive. Players in White Lax City worry for a reason. Van Nan murmured, at this pace the whole city might blacklist Celestial. 2 then shrugged, I am already kind for not killing to rob talent scrolls, we are only asking him to craft some, an easy chore that costs him nothing. To her the meaning of kindness clearly differed. Fatty's stats were far from 20 so he sat aside calm, if a scroll appeared he would ride the coattails and if not that was fine. Van Nan rummaged long and finally produced 5 skill scrolls and a heap of odds and ends, this is everything left. Ko Van Nak volunteered, let me handle it, I will rush to trade this pile into gear. Wang Vien smiled wryly while the other 2 stared blankly and understood why the leader pointed at him. Fine. Wang Vien agreed crisply and swept the odds and ends into his pack. Ko Van Nak clutched his chest as if struck for 10,000 damage, the leader did not trust him and his heart hurt. At once 2 then proved by action that he trusted nobody, he jerked his chin at the archer, you go too, which meant they would watch each other. Fatty scratched his head and asked, I am free as well, shall I tag along? All the better. 2 then smiled, 3 watching one another is safer. Ko Van Nak fell silent, the leader's intent was so plain it was almost undisguised, and in that days he recalled the priest in support had said they only needed puppets, but after joining he had not been oppressed and had been given gear, skills, stat points, and mid-tier potions and the guild mood was good so he had forgotten. Alright, you 3 go set up a street stall, if we cannot trade enough gear we will figure it out later. Van Nan waved. The trio left at once. Ko Van Nak and Fatty traded looks and then emptied their pockets honestly. I have a ring with intelligence +2. I did not hide it on
NK
purpose.
Books.
I already had 2 rings then and could not wear more. I meant to keep it to barter for something else. Who knew the guild would sponsor me? I have no spare gear. Fatty shook his head. Ko Van Nak had just thought him honest when he added, my gear was allocated by former teammates, so there is no spare. Ko Van Nak held his tongue, so there was nothing to stash after all. Chapter 66, The Meeting, Part 1. Vang Veen dusted his clothes and said blandly, penniless, so broke I must sell myself. Ko Van Nak exhaled. Let us go. Vang Veen said, we will set up a stall together, pretend that ring of yours was bartered by us, not secretly stashed. Ko Van Nak suddenly felt that if the guild ever dumped someone, the honor would surely pick him with 100% of the votes. In a blink 3 days passed. Vang Veen produced 3 skill scrolls and 4 pieces of gear and reported, this is our haul. To then flicked a glance and shook his head, only 4 pieces of gear. He had not expected to fail to reach a set of 5. Ko Van Nak sighed, players are just poor. He forgot that without Star Heaven he was also a pauper and might not even have survived. Fatty rushed to add, we tried to advertise hard, but most could not afford or did not care. Is it that bad? Van Nan doubted, those who lived this long are elites, can they not even buy a few scrolls? Vang Veen said gravely, it is more that scrolls are hard to sell, survivors are used to their old kits, unless a scroll is very special or they must broaden styles, they do not need many new skills, the real issues now are few potions, weak HP and MP recovery, and low stats, so attribute boosting gear is adored, while scrolls are optional, in fact short-term boosts like beast traps, alarm smoke, and warding pendants sell easier. Van Nan sighed and thought she should not have tossed those knickknacks to famous Pavilion. Van Nan shot a look, you made them forge a secret realm scroll for free and even cover the gear. Keeping him alive is already mercy, the rest is external. To then said firmly. Van Nan was speechless. Are the cards ready? To then checked. Of course. Van Nan replied. If you bully others you need a dual card. She had spent 3 days to craft one and now held 3 in total, 2-piece immunity cards and 1 dual invitation. To then mused, though auxiliary, the cards are useful, if only we could speed production. Nonsense, most talents are useful. Van Nan sneered. They walked and chatted, ignoring others. Ko Van Nak felt force-fed dog food and thought these two truly were a pair, even their disdainful tone matched. When the 5 entered the diner many were already seated. To then favored the table near the door, but of course others did too and it was taken. He still strode to that spot and told the occupant, pardon, slide over please. Why should I was here first. The burly man turned and went silent with eyes wide. To then arched a brow, what a coincidence, acquaintances. The trio were Chang Feng, Fa Kong, and Thiat Dao. Oh, alive are we. To then's greeting was odd. Chang Feng smiled worse than crying, luck only. When camp war began they had queued with support and priest, the priest was wicked and lied his name was Star Heaven, so he acted like a fool calling them beasts to their faces, thinking it was fine. Looking back he was lucky the dungeon then was cooperative or he might have died long ago. Luck is also a power. Van Nan added. Chang Feng wanted to weep, 3 versus 2 still might lose and the 2 beasts brought 3 helpers. If they refused to yield the spot would they die here today, rumor said support and priest could kill inside White Lac City. Please sit, we will find another seat. While he fretted, Fa Kong stood and yielded. No need, 8 can share 1 table. At that point to then changed tune, pretend we are allies for now. Everyone tacitly agreed and sat down, leaving the chair next to then for Van Nan. Van Nan muttered. She did not want to sit by him, but with all seated she could only take the seat with a sulk. Seems everyone likes the table by the door. Chang Feng opened. Did you come early to claim it? Tu then asked. No. Chang Feng shook his head. After a peaceful negotiation the early group voluntarily ceded it. Tu then curled his lip, nice phrasing, it surely smelled of money and force. Seems none of us feel secure. Van Nan looked around and found players clustering up. She tilted her head at Chang Feng and suddenly asked, "Do you want to join our camp war?" They had cooperated once and knew each other, and the team's skill was solid. Chang Feng broke into sweat. He had only spoken casually. Who would form a party with these two monsters? One spat might bring a blade. But if he refused, would it be an insult and get him chopped? Before he answered, Van Nan waved it off. Forget it, teaming with acquaintances is inconvenient. Star Heaven was dirt poor and needed to kill many monsters to restock the stash. Also a 5-stack was the norm for camp war. Their guild power was enough and they did not need more. She briefly craved to expand because Dark might field a 10-stack, but then she recalled party scrolls were scarce, so she calmed. Chang Feng froze and wondered what she planned with strangers then. Right then Fatty saw something, jolted, and whipped his head aside. "What are you doing?" Ko Van Nak almost got hit. "Why are you shaking?" Tu then asked. "Maybe the weather is cold." Fatty quavered. Ko Van Nak face palmed and thought this Fatty lacked backbone. With the boss behind him, what was there to fear? Where? In truth, Tu then wanted to see people even more shameless than himself. Chang Feng's eyelids twitched. "Tell me, Fatty, were your past teammates all talent users?" "Of course not." Fatty felt odd at the question. Chang Feng blanched, pulled a palm-sized compass, an auxiliary item that scans for nearby talent users. Van Nan peeked and saw 7 red dots at Fatty's former team, 4 red dots below, and scattered ones around. She asked, "What does it mean?" Each red dot marks a talent user. Chang Feng's heart sank, either innate or trained by talent scrolls. He finished and vanished. Ko Van Nak watched support, priest, Fatty, and Chang Feng vanish together and was dumbstruck. "What is happening?" he blurted. "Leave here first." Vong Vien decided swiftly. Time and Star Heaven had taught him White Lac City was not safe. The so-called safe zones were lies. Van Nan felt her vision blur and then stood in a strange space. A machine voice said, "Player number 6498 has invoked team battle talent on you. Only when one side is wiped can the other leave. You have 10 minutes to discuss tactics with allies. After 10 minutes the team battle begins." Team battle mode. Allies cannot damage each other. After casting a skill, its cooldown begins with a duration of 5 seconds. Van Nan looked around and found mostly acquaintances, herself, Fatty, the red-skirted archer from last time, the mage Chang Feng, plus a strange mage. All were paper thin, perhaps only Tu then stood as an exception with a main tank talent. "This is a fight to the death, show your cards and cooperate." She fixed on the unknown mage and ordered, "Introduce yourself first, start with you." The man stayed silent, eyes roving in doubt. "Then look at this." Van Nan smiled coldly and drew a dual invitation card. She raised it and activated it. The single dual card in her hand finally had a use. The man's eyes bulged. Chapter 67, Meeting 2. His innate skill was Battle Group, which could pull from 3 to 5 players into the battle group space, and only when one side was completely annihilated could the other side leave. Previously he had used this skill many times without error, let alone nonsense like a numerical imbalance between sides. Now the other side numbered as many as 6 people and even had a main tank, so how could they possibly suppress the opponents? What maddened them further was that once the battle group began, even he could not stop it, and the victor could only leave after a clear result. "This is hard to solve," the muscular man Vong Mo murmured while carrying his shield. "What is there to fear?" The team's main tank and leader, UC Mong, replied coldly. "We have 2 tanks and 3 ranged fighters, coordinated well, so can we not defeat a messy bunch? They just happen to have 6 gifted players." Support tank Vong Mo said casually, unconcerned. The group chuckled and the atmosphere lightened. "What about the enemy's main tank?" Thap Ha asked. Vong Mo took responsibility. "I'll hold that one." Thap Ha nodded and felt reassured. UC Mon smiled confidently and comforted the team. "Calm down, victory is in our hands." "Hurry up, there is no time to waste on you. The strange mage kept his head down and did not speak, prompting Van Nan to urge him. The odd mage looked up at the others. Who is she to suddenly take command of the team? Do none of you object? If she targets me first, later it might be your turn, perhaps we will become the sacrifices. He looked for allies against being suppressed. Map laughed and said, first, she is my boss, whatever she says I follow. Truong Fong showed reluctance and advised, I cannot vouch for other things, but this female mage follows through. If you do not heed her you might die in minutes, no chance to be the sacrifice. The red dress girl said coldly, I cooperated with her before, she keeps her word and is far more reliable than you. To then scoffed and said bluntly, she and I are the same team. Whether you like it or not, you mages alone, the 5 of us cooperate in the battle group. Besides, our team has one extra person. The odd mage fell silent and finally realized he was the outsider, which is why the female mage asked him first. He accepted his fate and declared honestly, name Mac Neem, male, focused on intelligence, currently intelligence 15 points. 3 skills are Wind Blade, Gale Formation, and Healing Art. What is the innate? Van Nan asked, not wasting time. Mac Neem was astonished that she asked that question. To then curled his lip, do you think why we were pulled here? They invited surviving players to meet, then suddenly surrounded us, they are surely not fools. Innate is base damage plus 20. Mac Neem finally admitted. Van Nan nodded and moved to the next person, Truong Fong, your turn. Truong Fong cooperated immediately, focus on intelligence 16 points. 3 skills are Poison Sting, Giant Fireball, and Web. He hesitated slightly then gritted his teeth, innate is MP plus 100 and base damage plus 5. He revealed this because if he concealed it and they lost, he would be betrayed, so he weighed the risks and played his card. Before Van Nan could speak, the red dress girl introduced herself, people call me Scarlet, I am a marksman main attacker, focused on strength currently 20 points. My innate is marksmanship, which raises hit chance for ranged attacks. Van Nan thought to herself that it was indeed an innate. Then Map proclaimed, Summoner, Team Support Tank. In truth the summoned beast was the support tank, but Map glossed over it. To then probed, you said they are your former teammates, do you know their skills and stats? Map was vague, I am not sure. I only know the warrior named UC Mong, he focuses on strength. To then accepted it reluctantly. For introductions were done, leaving Van Nan and To then yet to reveal, so 4 pairs of eyes focused on them. Main tank, innate is extra HP and defense. To then answered roughly and sneered, don't look at me, I might have been pulled here unintentionally. They likely wanted to draw 5 paper players in, they are not foolish enough to throw 5 against 6. Call me support. Half mage half support, innate is HP plus 200 and MP plus 200. Van Nan introduced simply. Mac Neem felt the 2 of them were perfunctory and not sincere. Van Nan showed her watch, attributes, skills, gear are too many to list, check them yourselves. Mac Neem glanced at the watch trembling and finally understood her confidence to take command. If we coordinate well victory will be easy. If anyone betrays or disrupts mid-fight, whoever it is I will behead them before I die. Van Nan announced coldly to deter them by revealing her stats. Scarlet agreed, alright, we follow you. To then stared at the enemy formation then said, Map, summon your beasts. Alright. Map was somewhat reluctant and began detailed instructions. When battle starts summon the bear to close on the enemy warrior, then summon the wood fiend and the venom serpent. The wood fiend should restrain the enemy warrior, the serpent stays behind and attacks with the others, and if anyone is in danger let the summons intercept. Understood. Map answered seriously. Then continued, my summons and I will wrap the enemy tank, everyone else focuses on killing their main damage dealer. No problem. Van Nan was very confident. She did not fully know Mac Neem's strength, but the others had cooperated with her before and would not hinder the team, so they only needed to play normally to secure victory. Mac Neem asked, What if they do not come close? He had no more to say. Rest assured, I will add shields for everyone. Van Nan reassured, besides, you have healing too. As soon as she finished, the light barrier between the sides suddenly vanished. Actually killing mages first would be logical, but the other side had 2 mages and she feared misidentifying them and scattering firepower. Scarlet drew her bow and shot while glancing coldly at Macneem. Macneem fumbled, tossed a windblade, and had no face to argue. Truong Fong waved his staff and a trail of magical fire rushed straight at the enemy marksman. At that moment the bear appeared before them, its huge body making the paper players feel extremely secure. Tu then stood silently and waited for the enemy to charge. In an instant 4 attacks struck Ko Tin, turning his face pale. He bit his teeth and rolled to dodge, avoiding wind blade and fire but not lightning in the arrow. His HP dropped rapidly and turned red, and he cried out, "Thap ha, buff my HP quickly." Thap ha casually threw a healing spell then coldly said, "Drink a red potion yourself, I do not have spare MP." She turned back to attack. Van Nan prepared to strike with lightning but the system warned, lightning art on 3 seconds cooldown. She switched to hail, thinking to herself, cooldowns are annoying. Just then she felt heat under her feet. Get out of the way. Truong Fong shouted while dodging aside, this is an area skill, pillar of fire. Immediately a circular pillar of fire burst up and only Truong Fong avoided it in time. Van Nan had just finished shielding Scarlet when she was hit and calmly noted, the mages on the other side hit hard too. Macneem mused that among the 4 one was leisurely retreating like Truong Fong, one was specially protected like Scarlet, one was thick-skinned and bulky like Support, and one had HP dropping so fast he looked drained like him. Scarlet narrowed her eyes, released the bowstring, and an arrow flew and struck Ko Tin. Ko Tin could not believe it, his eyes wide, but before he could speak he dissolved into a white beam of light. Roller coaster, you tweak a jolting sentence and it smooths the story's emotion like a roller coaster. Chapter 68, Meeting 4. A mechanical voice congratulated the winning players and announced that participants must leave the dungeon within 15 minutes, otherwise they would be teleported out automatically. At the same time, the light curtain surrounding the loot area vanished. Van Nan strolled to the loot and found only 3 talent scrolls on the ground. She frowned at there being only 3 scrolls. Everyone crowded around and showed surprise at seeing merely 3 scrolls. Hong Yi frowned, sensing something off, and reminded that there had been 5 people on the other side and that Macneem had contributed another talent scroll. Truong Fong looked up and guessed that only 2 of the 5 truly had talents while the others had only learned skill books. Tu then concluded that only players who genuinely possessed talent would drop a scroll when they died, whereas those who learned talent from books would see the book vanish upon death. They discussed each point clearly in turn. Map anxiously asked what they should do next. Truong Fong silently gripped his staff because with 5 people but only 3 scrolls he even considered killing another talented player to make 4 scrolls for 4 people. The thought made him more tense. As Van Nan picked up the 3 scrolls to show others, Truong Fong suddenly flashed and disappeared from his spot. Van Nan froze, feeling the scene oddly familiar, remembering someone once slipping away just as she was about to divide spoils. Hong Yi shook her head at Truong Fong's cowardice and then seriously urged Van Nan to take all 3 scrolls, saying she did not need them. Tu then whispered that the move was timely since practical talents were valuable and the Tin Tien Guild currently had the numbers, so they would not readily give up scrolls. Van Nan was slightly surprised but asked again if Hong Yi truly did not want them. She then took out a mid-grade healing potion and handed it over, saying it might save her life in a critical moment. After Hong Yi left, Van Nan muttered that the venomous snake could be summoned again once someone left the battle space, but Hong Yi did not care. Tu then urged them to open the scroll and see the skill. Reluctantly Van Nan revealed the scrolls and read the skill names. The first skill was Keen Edge, a passive that raised base damage by 15 points after learning. The second was Crafting, Secret Scroll, which after learning allowed a player to receive a secret scroll of mid-level difficulty every 240 hours. The third was Versatile Offense and Defense, a passive that granted 5 defense and 5 base damage after learning. To then remarked that versatile offense and defense only added 5 when weakened, explaining why UC Mon's damage seemed reduced earlier. Van Nan tossed versatile offense and defense to then and said take it, then she learned crafting, secret scroll herself. She hesitated about keen edge but eventually tossed that to then as well. To then was surprised but accepted it without warning, then joked that she finally realized how important he was to the team. Van Nan pouted and retorted that whether he mattered to the team was unknown, but whether he could continue living was of great importance to her. Earlier when Van Nan showed the watch she had deliberately concealed the attributes of the sincere affection rings, so Map did not know their lives were tied together. Hearing Van Nan, Map bowed his head and pretended not to exist while thinking how calm the leader was to start teasing right after battle. Van Nan changed the topic and noted that Pure White's squad had 79 people left while Deep Black had 60. Pure White held the advantage yet suddenly lost 6 people, one of whom had talent. To then scoffed that those with real strength survive. Most players think only of themselves, and someone who cares for the whole picture will be exhausted. Van Nan could not refute and kept silent. Map cautiously added that the system did not update squad numbers immediately, because he had thought players only died inside dungeons but now noticed inconsistencies. Van Nan guessed the system updated only after each battle ended, so numbers would not shift drastically. She sighed and said she worried that more talented players from Pure White might not have come to meet. When Truong Fong checked auxiliary gear, a few red dots appeared but not many, yet suddenly 6 people died together. To then reassured it was not that many, he had observed before being pulled into the battle space that about 40 players came to the meeting, meaning roughly 40% of the lucky survivors did not attend, and those had little choice in survival paths and thus were unlucky. Van Nan muttered that fighting battles was not that hard, often facing schemes from teammates was harder. To then smiled bitterly and said only oneself could be trusted. Map thought being a teammate or puppet did not matter as long as the leader helped him clear the dungeon. In the tavern some waited too long for the host and left. 2 survivors smirked confidently thinking they could handle the situation. A white flash appeared and Truong Fong reappeared at his old seat. Hong Yi observed the 2 and nodded that she remembered their faces, then left the tavern. The 2 were puzzled and asked who she was. Because Too High had chosen the targets, the 2 had stayed and did not know who had been pulled into the battle space. Time passed and one worried that this battle lasted long, the other said these survivors must have trump cards and that dealing with them was only a matter of time. Van Nan's trio returned to the tavern then. To then watched the 2 faces and asked Map if they were members of the Dream Hall Guild. One hesitated as if sensing something wrong. Now was not the time to fight. Why were they teleported back unless? To then declared he had memorized their faces and threatened they would die next time they met, which terrified them as they realized the situation. Van Nan coldly finished her sentence and walked away while Map happily followed. To then casually assessed their fear and thought their psychological quality was weak, they relied on luck. After the battle Van Nan messaged the mage and archer that the 3 were safe. Map obediently followed. Van Nan waved to dismiss everyone and said she would announce the next meeting later. Map left quickly. Van Nan muttered she had planned to exchange gear for a low-level secret scroll but now no longer needed it. Chapter 69, Meeting 4. The machine voice announced that the system congratulated the players for winning the group battle and invited them to leave the dungeon within 15 minutes, and when time runs out they will be automatically teleported out. At the same moment the light curtain surrounding the loot area disappeared. Van Nan walked leisurely to the loot area to see what was good and discovered that there were only 3 talent tome scrolls on the ground. Only 3, she frowned slightly. Everyone crowded around and looked astonished to see only 3 talent tomes. Hong Yi frowned and reminded that there had been 5 people on the other side. She also mentioned that Macneem had contributed a talent tome as well. Truong Fong looked up at the sky and suggested that among the 5 people on the other side only 2 truly had talents, while the others had only learned talent skill books. To then concluded that only players who truly possessed a talent drop a tome when they die, whereas those who learned a talent from a skill book will have the book disappear upon death. People exchanged thoughts one by one, analyzing the situation clearly. Map raised the important question of what to do now. Truong Fong could not hide his discomfort and clenched his staff silently because he felt something missing when 5 people produced only 3 tomes. He privately thought that if he killed one more talented player there would be 4 tomes for 4 people. The thought made Truong Fong increasingly tense. Just as Van Nan picked up the 3 tomes and was about to show them, Truong Fong flashed and vanished. Van Nan stood there feeling the scene strangely familiar. She vaguely remembered players vanishing quickly when she was about to divide spoils. Hong Yi smirked and said the courage was too small as she looked at where Truong Fong had stood, then seriously offered the 3 tomes to Van Nan, saying she did not need them. To then whispered approvingly that it was timely. Everyone knew the practicality of talents, and since the Tin Tien Guild had numerical advantage they would not willingly give up the tomes. Van Nan was a bit surprised by Hong Yi's refusal but accepted it. Hong Yi explained that Map's summoned beast had saved her life and this was her repayment, and she had been involuntarily dragged into this, so being able to leave alive was already fortunate. Hong Yi casually took a healing herb and teleported out of the dungeon. Van Nan muttered that perhaps Hong Yi thought the venomous snake was truly dead, and she reminded that once leaving the battle space Map could still summon the snake again. To then said not to care and urged them to open the tomes to see what skills they were. Van Nan reluctantly took the tomes out. One revealed the passive skill Sharp Edge, which upon learning increases base damage by 15. Another was Crafting Secret Tome, which after learning allows a player to obtain a medium difficulty secret tome every 240 hours. They discussed that multifaceted offense and defense when weakened only gave +5, explaining why damage seemed reduced earlier against Yu Simong, and if HP had been normal the foe might have escaped. Van Nan handed multifaceted offense and defense to Van and learned Crafting Secret Tome herself. When it came to Sharp Edge she hesitated a moment but also handed it to Van. Then was surprised and Van Nan said seriously that he should learn it because he had a lot of HP and defense and high damage, plus lifesteal sword, so in the next battle he could dare to leave the safe area. She listed that 4 Tin Tien equipment pieces gave +5 defense, the talent gave +5 defense, the passive skill gave +5 defense, and completing the defensive base gave another 15 defense. In other words, Then had +30 defense total, equivalent to reducing incoming damage by 60%. Then felt awkward because he was used to relying on his own strength to seize things, and Van Nan voluntarily giving him good items made him uneasy, yet he could not refuse and accepted the tome naturally, joking that finally she knew how important he was to the team. Van Nan pouted and said she did not know whether he was important to the team but whether he could continue living was extremely important to her. Earlier when Van Nan showed the data on the watch she had deliberately hidden the attributes of the sincere affection rings, so Map did not know their lives were linked. Hearing Van Nan, Map bowed his head instinctively and pretended not to exist while thinking the leader had just finished fighting and already started spreading romance, very calm. Then silently marveled that they dug pits for each other but never truly buried one another, their relationship both harmonious and awkward. Van Nan changed the subject and reported that the Pure White Battle Company had 79 people left and the Deep Black Company had 60. Pure White held the advantage yet suddenly lost 6 people, and they were talented players too. Then sneered that only the strong survive and most players think that way, who would care for teammates beyond themselves and go to death for them. Van Nan retorted that is the point, and then fell silent because she could not argue further. Map carefully interjected that the system did not update member numbers of the 2 companies immediately. He had thought players could only die in the dungeon but now noticed inconsistencies when Pure White lost 6 people without system notice. Van Nan guessed the system updated numbers only after each round of battle concluded. Map feared that Pure White's player count might not actually exceed Deep Black's. Van Nan sighed and worried more that there might be more talented players from Pure White than just them. When Truong Fong brought out auxiliary equipment the red dots displayed were not many, and yet 6 had died at once. Then said it was not that many. Before being pulled into the battle space Van Nan had observed around 40 people attend the meeting, meaning roughly 40% of lucky survivors did not come. They lacked options and thus some were ill-fated. Van Nan muttered that most deaths felt like calculated schemes in skirmishes. To then smiled wryly that aside from oneself there are no true teammates, the only one to trust is oneself. Map thought inwardly that whether teammate or puppet did not matter as long as the leader carried him through, he valued practical benefit above all. Later in the dining hall people waited long for a host who never appeared and one by one left. Eventually only 2 members of the Truong Mong Guild remained quietly waiting and they wore confident smiles. A white flash occurred and Truong Fong reappeared at his seat, glanced at the 2 and hurried away. Then Hong Yi observed the 2 and nodded, saying she remembered them, before leaving the hall. One person asked who that girl was and the other honestly replied not knowing, puzzled why she said she remembered them. Time passed with some anxiety and someone asked if this battle took longer than usual, and at that moment Van Nan's 3 companions returned to the hall. To then studied the faces of the 2 and looked to Map who shook his head to indicate they were strangers, so to then asked directly whether they were members of the Truong Mong Guild. One hesitated, sensing something amiss, since it was not battle time why had they been teleported back to the city unless, the other nodded instinctively. To then declared he had memorized their faces and next time they met those 2 would die, and since there was no invitation token he could not kill them immediately. The 2 surviving Truong Mong members finally understood and stared in disbelief. Van Nan calmly stated that the next meeting would be their death and walked away. Map cheerfully followed, and to then looked at the fearful faces while thinking their psychological makeups were weak. After the group battle Van Nan messaged the mage and the archer that the 3 were safe. Map obediently followed and asked where to go now, and Van Nan ordered them to disperse, saying they would meet again before the next battle and she would announce the exact time later. Van Nan muttered that she had planned to trade equipment for a low-difficulty secret tome but now it would not be necessary. Chapter 70, Dungeon 8 Part 1. Van Nan could not help glancing at the mage with a meaningful look. Vang Vien calmly explained that leaving the remaining 3 slots unused would be wasteful, selling them for some practical benefit would be better. The Great Elder, accustomed and reasonable, took the initiative to say the whole dungeon does not spawn monsters, only grants attribute points. After clearing the 3 celestial grade items will belong to everyone, and he would add 6 low-quality items as compensation for attribute points. Last time they traded with another guild using combat-exempt cards so the Scholar House escaped extreme poverty, now they can use unused items to trade for 2 free attribute points each, a really profitable deal. The offer was so tempting Van Nan felt it would be a pity to refuse. To then also agreed to enter the dungeon. After clearing, the Great Elder proactively handed over the celestial items. After the dungeon run ended Van Nan began distributing gear but Chubby had already collected all 6 pieces. Ko Van Nak had celestial pants but still lacked the archer's soft armor so he patched by wearing a mage robe for now. Van Nan tilted the celestial boots, celestial breastplate and celestial pants with disgust, saying these useless things she would offer as sacrifice. The Great Elder smiled wryly because no one would discard celestial gear like them. After the dungeon the 3 Scholar House members hurriedly said farewell. Only then did to then raise an eyebrow and curiously ask why not trade celestial gear with others, since based on Van Nan's usual style she would certainly swap celestial items for junk gear. She told the archer to add attribute points into strength until it reached 20, put the rest into stamina, and when an attribute reached 20 choose the reward of plus 10 base damage. Ko Van Nak's face lit up, so happy he could not close his mouth because his strength finally reached 20. To then added 2 points to agility and muttered that a few more secret dungeon runs and all his attributes would reach 20. Currently his attributes were strength 20, agility 13, stamina 20, intelligence 20. Chubby looked at his big brother with extreme admiration. Vang Vien secretly marveled, thinking his thigh indeed was big. Ko Van Nak was silent since he only had 1 attribute at 20 while the elder nearly had 20 in all 4, the gap between them seemed large. Van Nan frowned and asked why he raised all 4 attributes to 20, did he not distinguish primary from secondary? To then lazily replied that melee play needs all 4 attributes, unlike ranged which only needs intelligence, stamina increase is less important, and since he had decided Van Nan complied. The next day all guild members met in the dungeon to begin the new battle formation. A system task appeared on everyone's black clock stating that before the enemy formation fails, no monster may pass through the teleport array, and each player would receive 200 points upon completion. After finishing the main task, players may leave the dungeon at any time, otherwise their profile will be deleted. In this dungeon, players standing in safe zones cannot be attacked, while players inside the dungeon may be attacked by all other players. Vong Veen thought to himself it was the same rule as last time. Van Nan and To then stared at their teammates because the pure white side initially had 10 players but now only 8, and by coincidence they were all acquaintances. To then curled his lip and coldly smiled that perhaps he had already said it, next time they meet those two must die. Van Nan remarked she did not expect to meet them inside the dungeon, their luck was truly awful. Someone advised to focus on the bigger picture as the battle formation was about to start. Another challenged to just stay in the safe zone and see what the others could do. These two were the lucky survivors of the Dream Guild. Van Nan answered practically by using a challenge card to attack, and one person fell. She used another challenge card and another died. After tidying up, she greeted Truong Phong that it was nice to see him again. Van Nan explained while pulling out a talent scroll that had dropped from one of those two, noting they were accomplices with the 5-person warband last time and not to be trusted. The skill was crafting talent scrolls. Each time you collect 80 essence fragments you obtain a primary scroll. Disassembling gear yields essence fragments, and the better the item the more fragments you get. Van Nan frowned slightly because when talent becomes a skill its effect diminishes, plus she has a sacrifice skill so surplus gear is in high demand, and she recently learned medium-level scroll crafting, making this talent scroll somewhat redundant. So she tossed the scroll to Truong Phong generously, saying he was rushed last time so he missed out on loot and this was his gift. Fa Kong quickly grabbed the scroll. Thiad Dao suspected she had some skiing but had to think what it was. After dealing with the remnants of the Dream Guild, Van Nan cheerfully assessed the terrain. To then analyzed the map shaped like an H. Left was Pure White's dungeon, right was Deep Dark's. The horizontal bar of the H split in two with Pure White players on the left and Deep Dark players on the right. Initially each side had 10 players, now Pure White had 8 and Deep Dark remained intact. The teleport array was in the center and monsters would spawn from the two ends of each side's eye and run toward the center, where only 3 archer towers with equal attack power stood along the path, so it was best to split forces into 2 teams to deal with them, and the spawn distance to the teleport array was too short, so if the number of monsters was a bit high then. He paused and finally concluded this time it was relatively hard to handle. Truong Phong felt that description was euphemistic and it should be extremely hard to handle. Van Nan remained calm, saying it was fine because everyone was the same and their opponents were no better. Truong Phong shouted that now they only had 8 people and under survival pressure his fear of the priest and support lessened because dying sooner or later was still death. He could not wait until the end of the formation to kill those 2. Immediately Chubby summoned 3 beasts. Truong Phong's trio fell silent, so they were also redundant. Because each dungeon can only use 3 cards, she planned to use her last card on a Deep Dark formation player. Van Nan was stunned as the other side also had challenge cards and used one on her. At that moment she almost laughed. At the same time To then received a system prompt and quickly found the ambusher, the enemy archer who was drawing his bow and grinning smugly. To then immediately used lightning art and began attacking. The surprise strike left the archer bewildered with shock on his face as he could not understand why he was being attacked. To then kept the lightning going and the archer failed to use a crowd control skill in time, so shortly after he turned into white light. Van Nan recalled in panic that To then could hit both ranged and melee from afar and up close. His high damage forced humanoid bosses into strong defense. To then muttered in regret that he had used all 3 card turns. If he had a few more he could have struck more primary targets. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Truong Phong's face changed and he shouted in shock because To then realized the mistake. It was not that a dungeon only allowed 3 cards, but each side in the same dungeon could use 3 cards, so if both sides had cards the maximum could be 6. To then shouted they would protect him and counterattack. Truong Phong bit his lip and decided to trust the priest, unleashing webs, fire pillars, massive fire pillars and venom. Unfortunately the opponents were experienced and the Deep Dark formation's fighter stepped forward to block attacks for their mage. Van Nan felt helpless as Truong Phong's attacks kept being Intercepted, and she asked if he had an auto-target skill. Truong Fong honestly shook his head, saying no. She only regretted not being the one hit because she could throw her berserker and add a few lightning strikes to finish off someone. The deep dark mage swung a wind blade to then move to shield Truong Fong, but the blade curved and hit its mark, causing Truong Fong to fall silent, as at this rate they would soon fail. Checkered flag. You do not fix everything, but each suggestion moves the story forward. Chapter 71, 8th Dungeon Part 2. Just as Van Nan was about to use a duel card on the Dark Faction Mage, Fa Kong's face changed and he cried, "Help me!" No sooner had he spoken than a water arrow streaked toward him. To then flicked it aside with his sword, yet another water arrow flew at once, and Thiat Dao rushed up to block it with his shield. Only then did Fa Kong exhale, eyes trembling at the female archer across the way who aimed a crossbow, with a summoned giant of water by her side. Van Nan frowned and muttered, "Using 2 duel cards at once?" She asked, "What are they trying to do?" It was clear that if they only covered and stalled for 3 minutes the duel card would expire, so why waste another one? Were dark players fools? She quickly understood why. The archer and the mage each pulled a card and targeted an opponent. Then Truong Fong and Fa Kong received a system prompt that said, "Dark players used a solo card on you, you suddenly want a quiet empty place to be alone, the effect lasts 1 minute." The two of them fell silent. Could they refuse to go? Yet the card took control, their bodies left the team and ran far away. Fa Kong flashed to a corner, while Truong Fong had been in a corner and instinctively ran out of the safe zone. "Thiat Dao!" cried Truong Fong. Van Nan sensed danger. She quickly shielded Fa Kong and shouted, "Map Map, have the tree spirit bind Truong Fong back here." Inside the safe zone allies could not attack each other. Map Map thought so, yet his body obeyed her voice, so as Truong Fong crossed the edge he was bound and dragged back. After merely 2 heartbeats, arrow spells and fireballs fell like rain. Truong Fong shuddered at the thought and shook all over. Thiat Dao tried to approach Fa Kong to guard him, but as he neared, Fa Kong hopped like a frightened rabbit and sprinted off. Map Map said sadly, "The tree spirit cannot bind for long." Books. To then pointed at Fa Kong and said, "Throw him together with Fa Kong, better than going outside the safe zone." Map Map followed at once. Thus Fa Kong and Truong Fong stood isolated in a corner under constant fire. They countered, but melee players from Dark blocked every line, so they stopped fighting back and focused on dodging to stall. Fa Kong panted and cursed inside that the female archer's aim was damned precise. He varied pace and direction so often that even he did not know his next step, yet she still sometimes hit, and the summoned beast that spat water arrows was worse with an even higher hit rate. He only grumbled, while Truong Fong already wanted mutual destruction. The archer relied on aim, and the dark mage seemed blessed by the system with homing attacks. Van Nan kept adding shields inside. The shield's health is too low. Once the mage breaks it, there is still damage left on Truong Fong. To then pondered briefly and whispered, "Use a duel card on that mage, then throw him a berserk. I will handle the mage, you keep shielding Fa Kong." The mage's eyes reddened. He hurled 3 wind blades at Truong Fong, then backed off fast and turned to attack Van Nan. Someone exclaimed, "What are you doing?" as the sudden retreat left the front guard exposed and a gap opened. With the danger gone, Truong Fong's legs buckled and he slumped. His life bar was under 10%. One more moment and he would have died. He drew deep breaths and stared blankly at the sky. The dungeon had not begun and monsters not spawned yet. He felt more exhausted than after a normal faction battle. As the fight ended, Fa Kong groaned, "Everyone is going all out. I want to return to Bai Lak City." To then smiled and said, "The result is not bad. Each side used 3 duel cards and lost 2 people. It looked even in skill, but that was not the right way to count. Van Nan spent 3 cards to cut down 2 players who could incite internal conflict plus 1 enemy mage. Dark used 3 cards, 1 archer failed to kill and was killed, their mage failed to kill Truong Fong and died, and their female archer could not kill Fa Kong. The outcome showed Dark was losing. While they spoke, monsters appeared at both ends of the instance. To then decided quickly, I with the warlock and the archer take the top, Map Map and Truong Fong's trio take the bottom. Map Map nodded repeatedly. Thiat Dao grumbled, "We are not his flunkies, why obey his orders?" Truong Fong accepted fate and said, "They saved our lives, just listen." Van Nan socketed fire wind combo stones into all 3 arrow towers on their side to enlarge the attack range. Once set, they had barely taken position when Thiat Dao yelled, "Damn, there are too many monsters." About 24 normals mixed with elites came together, both ends made roughly 40. To then shouted, "Stop dazing and attack." Map ordered the bear to stand in the lane to block, on the other side to then stood in the path to hold the wave. No more truce cards could be used, everyone had to focus on monsters to avoid friendly fire. Several attacks landed on To then and the bear at once. To then switched to a lifesteal sword, he charged into the pack and reaped, sometimes blessing himself with Holy Realm, ignoring dark fire entirely. The bear, though dopey looking, was a 6th rank summon. It had a stun on attacks and a passive thick hide fat flesh that raised defense and life. Someone finally shouted, "Stop hitting players, this is a tower defense game, if monsters reach the portal we all die." Van Nan stayed stern and fully alert, sometimes she sided with lightning, sometimes she used hailstorm to sweep, sometimes she shielded the tank, and sometimes she summoned a rock golem to soak for the tank. The Star Heaven guildmates were used to her doing the clearing, all were calm, only Thiat Dao felt awkward. He watched a monster he had crippled with effort get last hit by the support and felt very upset. Truong Fong advised, "Let it go, living through this faction war is good enough." Fa Kong glanced around and murmured, "Their tanks are all their people, of course they take the lion's share." Thiat Dao snapped, "I am a tank too." Map blinked and said, "Want to go up? I can call the bear back for a rest." His ease made it hard to refuse. Truong Fong glared and said, "You think it is nice, once you step out of the safe zone, coming back is not certain." Fa Kong soothed, "Calm down, they eat meat, we drink soup, not the first time, loot is not worth more than life." Thiat Dao muttered twice and fell quiet. Truthfully, when Map was about to send him out he hesitated, the dark players were eyeing them like tigers, he had no death wish. Though rushed off her feet, Van Nan still spared a look at dark, their firepower was not enough to one-shot the wave, so someone had to step out to block, that would be the chance. She held her breath and waited. But at that moment a colossal fireball bloomed overhead and wiped roughly 15, the rest focused fire and cleaned the 5 that remained. A rock golem also held the lane. Once the top was cleared, everyone swung down to finish below. Van Nan gnashed innate talent again. The dark side's mana hardly dropped while the skill's power was absurd, so she judged it was a talent. She held her forehead and wondered how many of those 10 had talents, why did they never run out? Van Nan tossed a sacrificial gear to each side, in a blink her team was done. To then fell silent. Someone had started wasting again, wasting yet again. This was not a desperate moment, why spend sacrificial gear? Fall 1 beat behind and the enemy would finish their wave and be free. Their first action would be to focus the main tank. To then's face hardened, he sensed the danger and commanded faster, then he kept casting Holy Realm. Both sides fought for every breath. As the last monster fell, the bear and To then retreated to the safe zone at once, and the dark players halted at the same time. Vang Vien muttered, "These opponents are hard, any survivor till now is strong and has some skills." Van Nan sneered and said, "Next is attrition, compare potions and recovery, attrition. Fights never scare me, if they have talents then I have them too." Chapter 72, 8th Dungeon, Part 3. No sooner had he finished than a dark faction mage raised his staff, a pale blue glow covered the safe zone, and the MP bars of all 8 of them filled at once. To then snapped, "Why so many innate gifts?" Van Nan said flatly, "Please stop talking." To then muttered, "I am disliked again. How did they clear mobs just now? It seemed no one stepped out of the safe zone, right?" Ko Van Nak was groggy, he had focused on fighting and failed to look over. "They used a super strong area skill, one cast wiped most mobs," Van Nan explained, "then summoned beasts to block the path, and the others poured damage." Super strong and wide area, Vang Vien mouthed those words, then said, "Maybe the skill guzzles MP, so they cannot cast many times." Van Nan shook her head. After casting, the MP bars of all 8 barely changed. She shot him a glare, thinking he could just hush and stand aside. Truong Fong told himself, "We are stronger," yet their hidden cards dragged both sides even. He did not complain, hiding cards is also a kind of strength. To then concluded, our opponents are unusually strong, do not relax, when the next wave spawns, wipe them fast, then drink potions at once. Everyone nodded. Van Nan told the warlock, when the new wave starts, you and I will kill Dark's summoned beasts. Without beasts blocking, mobs reach the portal more easily, forcing Dark's main tank to leave the safe zone. With that turtle posture, taking down their main tank will be easy. Okay, Vong Vien agreed. Under Fatty's heels, HP of Truong Fong, Fa Kong, To Then, and the bear climbed fast, yet To Then was unsatisfied. Bring red and blue potions, I will recover fully before going out. Van Nan got it, the fight was brutal, he could not spare hands to sip potions often, so used the rest time to speed recovery. If danger hits right out of the safe zone, he will cope. His stash holds high-grade potions, one of those equals 10 low-grade. She cheerfully handed over 20 red and 10 blue, then added, if not enough, I have more. Truong Fong was stunned, the support's nouveau riche style shocked him. Fa Kong whispered, did they rob someone or what? Robbing, Truong Fong felt confused. Thiat Dao muttered, with that many potions, how many guilds did they rob? Fatty nodded briskly, sure. 5 for the bear, the rest for me, To Then decided and started chugging. Truong Fong gaped, 20 red and none for him. He tried to act pitiful to the support, I have the lowest HP, my reds are almost gone, can I have one? You do not need to drink, Van Nan said coolly, per dungeon, each faction uses at most 3 cards, Dark cannot attack you more, just stay in the safe zone and regen. Truong Fong fell silent, their stuff is theirs to give or not, still, watching the priest drink like water made him envious. They rested to recover, To Then sidled to Van Nan and whispered, the next wave decides the win, when mobs spawn, sacrifice gear at once, when fewer than 10 remain, stop, speed clear the dungeon, then turn on Dark. So you will not be stingy then, she asked. He replied, common mobs mix with elites, drops are few, I did quick math, even with your luck buff, our potions and gear outspend our gains, a long war hurts us, better finish them while morale is high, this tower defense is a resource duel, if I can save, I will not waste, fastest finish is the best saving. He stressed the last 2 lines. Van Nan muttered, end stage neurosis. To Then stared, what did you say, too quiet. She feigned innocence and corrected, I said your combat style is unlike mine. When mobs are many, she often sacrifices for convenience. That is why you emptied your gear days ago, To Then sneered, implying that if he used sacrifice, he would never be drained, proud as ever. Van Nan said nothing. Are you not afraid that for 1 or 2 items you might wipe the guild? She smiled half teasing, let us hurt each other then. To Then had no retort, it also sounded. Right. Ko Van Nak nudged Fatty and jerked his chin at To Then, whispering, he can still flirt in danger, what a boss. Maybe to the boss this is not dangerous, Fatty chuckled. Vong Vien eyed Fatty in surprise, nice, you are more enlightened. Fatty kept grinning. The next assault began fast, 30 mobs spawned at each end and surged toward the portal. Dark moved at once. 3 ranged players focused the bear, spent MP recklessly, and blasted away. 2 gigantic fireballs fell on both ends and swept the mobs clean. Summoned beasts blocked the road, the rest attacked hard. Warlock, Truong Fong, Archer, focused the dark beasts, Van Nan shouted, to be safer she called 2 more to act, and she hurled sacrifice gear. Explosions boomed in succession. Seeing the bear's HP plunge, Fa Kong panicked, his hand shook, an arrow hit the bear. He gave an awkward smile, misclick. Dark poured fierce fire, and the bear still died. Yet they were not happy, the pure faction also nearly cleared their mobs, and worse, the pure players shot Dark's beasts too, so both sides traded losses. Van Nan smiled faintly, cash players are unreasonable like that, who bothers to compare mechanics, just slam with money. Clear the mobs, To Then roared as timing came, and he dashed at the remaining elites. To avoid friendly fire, Van Nan stopped sacrificing and switched to lightning, the others joined in. Dark could not summon again, their main tank had to step out to block. Vong Vien seized the chance, cast bind, and shouted, support, now, I locked him. Van Nan instantly threw berserk. At the same time, Pure finished the dungeon, free hands turned to burst the dark main tank. Arrows, magic bullets, poison, fireballs, and lightning drowned him. Van Veen chained another bind, the dark main tank froze in place. The pure players kept firing, and he soon turned into a white ray. Van Nan glanced at To Then. If that were you, you could not endure either. First controlled then a storm of damage, this brutal style leaves no room to fight back. Not necessarily, it depends on enemy damage, also bind eats MP, without 20 intelligence and top gear you cannot cast many times. To Then trusted his HP and defense, then he paused and added, but it is still too risky, avoid it if you can. Fair point, Van Nan said. We lost. The female archer lowered her crossbow and stated blankly. Someone ground his teeth. If we knew we would lose anyway, we should have focused their main tank. Now he had retreated into the safe zone and could not attack even if he wanted. That is hindsight, she said. We targeted their beasts to win. Everyone knows beasts are weaker. Who knows how high their tank's defense is, what his HP is, and whether he carries mid-red potions. Do we give up? Someone still refused and fought the mobs with all his might? The female archer sighed, without a main tank, even if we last this wave, what use? Seeing mobs break through and rush the portal, she flipped her hand, and a card appeared on her palm. As the dark mobs stepped into the portal, a machine voice sounded, "Game over, pure faction wins, congratulations on a successful tower defense. Dungeon complete, please leave within 15 minutes, you will be teleported after time expires." As it ended, all dungeon mobs vanished, and dark players turned into white light. Kovan Nak saw the dark female archer stand safely inside Pure Zone and gaped, "How did you sneak in here?" Those who had raided before vaguely realized something. Van Nan called out firmly, "Do not rush off, let us talk." "What do you want?" The female archer stayed calm. "I am not a spy," she said frankly, "I just used a betrayal card, after use I switched sides, so now I am pure." To Then reacted at once, "If we hold a betrayal card for the last battle, is that not a guaranteed win?" She answered solemnly, "In theory yes, but the key is having the card and surviving to the last fight." Chapter 73, Side Quest 8-4. Monsters Drop Items. Van Nan was about to explain that she had picked up countless things from monsters but had never seen a betrayal card, when the female archer sadly continued. "But the drop rate is so low it makes one furious." "How low is it?" To Then asked with curiosity. The archer thought a moment and said, "This game is ending soon, and aside from myself I have only met one person I suspect had a betrayal card." "What do you mean? How do you know?" To Then demanded skeptically. Thinking of UC Mon's behavior, Van Nan had to admit the archer's words made sense. To Then quickly considered a countermeasure. A betrayal card can save a life once in danger, but what if you collect several? Use one card each time the battle unit fights, couldn't you survive to the end? To Then pondered for a long while, then suddenly said, "Prove what you say. You claim the betrayal card is single use, that they are very scarce, that they drop from monsters rather than being innate gifts. Who knows if this is true or false?" The archer was at a loss. "How do you want me to prove it? I already used the only card I had, I cannot show it to you." "None of you have seen anyone use a betrayal card before, doesn't that prove how rare it is?" Still, To Then was not fully convinced, and at times he regarded the archer with a look that seemed to think killing her would ease his mind. The archer shivered under that gaze and tried to persuade them further. "Everything I said is true. Except for risking my life for the Thuan Bak unit, I have no way back. Having another player with a talent join Thuan Bak is not a bad thing. If this talented player plans to cause trouble and uses an invitation card to blend into Bak Lak, it would be dangerous." To Then's eyes flashed with a feral glint. The archer fell silent. She wanted to flee the dungeon immediately because she was tired of not being believed. To Then said coldly, "After all, you are someone who came over from the Tam Hack unit." The archer had nothing more to say. To Then was about to continue, but Van Nan held him back and winked. He paused and then fell silent. The archer looked as if she would go mad. "How many more times must I repeat this? You can use a betrayal card to leave, but I am bound to the Thuan Bak unit. If the boat capsizes, I am ruined." She was heartbroken. Van Nan paid no mind and casually said, "If not, then good. Then she waved, "Finish the battle unit event, everyone disband." The 3 Truong Phong members felt liberated and left quickly. They had entered the dungeon as teammates and already fought one another, then on the safe route were attacked by Tam Hack players, and thereafter had to stay on guard constantly, the risky excitement unbearable. Finally they could leave. The female archer smiled in relief and vanished. Van Nan also disappeared. To then remained silent. Vang Vien's face relaxed and his suspicions were erased. Back in Bok Lak City, the mechanical voice reported the battle status. Before the 8th dungeon, the Thuan Bok unit had 79 players, the Tam Hack unit had 60. Currently Thuan Bok has 29 players left, Tam Hack has 21, please continue to strive. Unlike usual, the voice did not stop and added, the next dungeon is the final decisive battle, survivors please prepare. 15 days from now the final decisive battle will begin. After speaking she smiled faintly. She still had tasks to do before the final decisive battle. As soon as he returned to the city, to then receive news and his face became serious. He went straight to the training ground, entered the room and said, "If it is not important then you know what to do." "You think I am you?" Van Nan replied. She spoke plainly, "I planned to wait until everyone teleported away to talk to you in the dungeon, but it seems the mage noticed something so I returned to Bok Lak first and then contacted you." For example, she had found a betrayal card, confirming the Tam Hack archer's words. "You really cannot be fooled." Van Nan casually tossed the betrayal card to Van. Betrayal card, after use the player switches sides. Note, each player can use the betrayal card only once. Then read the description and smiled slightly, "No wonder you refused to let me interrogate her further." Van Nan said seriously, "Thuan Bok currently holds the advantage, having a talented player united with us would be good. I do not want anyone to know I found the card to avoid being treated as an enemy. I plan to keep fighting for Thuan Bok's final victory and treat the betrayal card as insurance, best not to use it." Then looked at her, "You worry only one person will switch sides, don't you? If 2 people were on different units they would surely die." Van Nan showed no expression, although the sincere love rings are special, unexpected things must be guarded against. "I do not want to be fine at first and then die for an incomprehensible reason." Then smirked and tossed the card back, "Keep it as backup, though I do not think we will need it." Van Nan smiled and answered softly, Bok Lak City is so large yet only 29 players remain, it looks like a dead city with emptiness everywhere and no lively scenes from before." The next morning the Tin Tien Guild gathered at the eatery. Van Nan asked, "Does anyone know players still alive? I have a skill reel I do not use and I want to give it, after all they are on the same unit." Dan Nan Kak. Vang Vien murmured. Fatty blinked, "Our previous teammates are all dead." Ko Van Nak remarked, "Players we knew are all in the Tin Tien Guild, those we knew earlier have fallen." "Then give it to Dan Nan Kak." Van Nan tossed the skill reel to Vang Vien and entrusted him, books. "Go take care of it." Then considered, "Before the final decisive battle we must enter the special dungeon, besides that there seems nothing else." Van Nan was moved, "We seized the absolute advantage earlier, so now we can sit and wait for the war to start." While they spoke, the leader of Dan Nan Kak arrived. Fatty whispered, "It is not yet time to grind stats." "What is it?" Then asked. The leader pulled a skill reel from his inventory and said, "Secret zone, special dungeon, high difficulty, extremely rich rewards, simulating the final decisive battle. No friendly fire inside, allows up to 15 people. After using the skill reel the entrance to the secret zone opens." Note, this is a special reel, Thuan Bok only has one. Then muttered, "Simulate the final decisive battle." Van Nan arched an eyebrow, "So we rehearse beforehand, warm up with a fight?" Vang Vien guessed, "If it simulates the decisive battle the map and format are likely identical." Then smile chilled, "Leader is truly lucky." The leader trembled but regained composure and said, "Dan Nan Kak only has 3 people, far from 15. I want to find a full 15 to rehearse the decisive battle." Van Nan stroked her chin. Gathering 15 is hard. Last time Truong Mong Guild made people climb trees and most players do not want group activities now, they prefer training ground. The leader explained, I contacted previous acquaintances, experience shows those who follow orders safely fare better. To then agreed, alright. Vang Vien quickly calculated, 3 Dan Nan Kak plus 5 Tin Tien makes 8, 7 more needed. Van Nan suggested, Hong Wai and 3 Truong Fong would work. To then glanced at her and asked casually, do you have a way to contact them? Van Nan hesitated, of course she did not. The leader offered, then I will find the remaining people. Goggles, you clearly see the bugs even if they hide well, truly the gatekeeper of content. Chapter 74, High-Tier Secret Realm, Part 1. 5 from Celestial Star, 3 from Famous Pavilion, 3 from Sea Breeze, and 4 from Eternal Guild gathered at the gate. Van Nan scanned the crowd and recognized the Famous Pavilion trio as Great Boss, the Archer, and the Mage. Sea Breeze had 2 men and 1 woman, while Eternal Guild had 3 men and 1 woman. Great Boss cleared his throat to introduce, but a Sea Breeze player cut in bluntly. Enter the dungeon now, the next time is the final showdown, knowing each other does not matter. Great Boss smiled bitterly, since surviving this far meant uncommon skill and a dash of arrogance. To then glanced at 7 unfamiliar faces and asked coolly, where did you find them? The Archer snorted and answered, we dragged whoever passed by, the acquaintances are dead, this is the fastest way. It was like any online raid, short on people then call at the gate and pick whoever joins. To then nodded, so the chill came from being strangers. Then let us enter now. Van Nan felt it was fine. With the other guilds agreeing, Great Boss produced a high-difficulty secret realm scroll. The scroll unfurled and a dazzling golden gate slowly opened before them. Let us have a look. To then stepped through first. The 3 Sea Breeze players hurried in right behind. What is the rush? Entering first does not mean free coins. Ko Van Nak muttered. Move out, we go together. Van Nan led her juniors in. When all 15 had crossed, the golden gate closed with unhurried grace. A mechanical voice greeted them inside the instance. Welcome to the high-difficulty secret realm, defend the tower until you cannot hold, do not let any monster pass the teleport array. Note, this is endless, every 5 minutes a new wave appears. Finish the task to earn 200 points per player, then request exit at any time, friendly fire is disabled this run, have fun. So it is a stamina match. In other words, we must outlast the dark faction. No win condition except lasting longer, the system loves torment. Similar remarks rippled through the map. A cross-shaped map. Van Nan rubbed her chin. To then smiled and pointed. For lanes, the array in the center, 4 guilds, each takes 1 side. Only your guild has 5 people though, a Sea Breeze player objected. Van Nan explained evenly. If any lane breaks, the array is doomed, so Celestial Star will put 3 on 1 lane and keep 2 in the center to rotate, whichever side falters we rush to help. The Archer from Famous Pavilion muttered under breath. Helping is a pretext, kill stealing is the truth. The Mage nudged him to hush, and he obeyed. Sea Breeze and Eternal were not used to Van Nan's style, yet after a short talk they agreed briskly. At that moment a woman from Eternal stepped beside Van Nan and Vang Vien. I will support, she said firmly. Welcome, welcome. Van Nan replied, because she feared no one in a contest of last hits. The very first wave stunned everyone. Ready to assist. The Eternal woman drew a cross staff, her face solemn. While she looked away, Vang Vien gave Van Nan a tiny nod, signaling the routine. He would chip monsters low and Van Nan would secure the last hit. He knew exactly what to do. Van Nan smiled, picking a sorcerer as partner had been right, swapping in Fatty and the gunner would never be this in sync. The bosses started moving, to then stood mid-lane to intercept. Each lane had 3 arrow towers. He socketed attack speed crystals on the first, and range crystals on the second, waiting for bosses to crawl through a storm and meet him. Ko Van Nak drew and loosed, prioritizing squishy targets. Fatty summoned 3 beasts, the bear horse and the dryad waited quietly, while the viper began spitting venom. A clean strike landed, yet the fighter did not stop. He dodged most blows, hoisted the wizard and tossed him back, then retreated swiftly. Others pounced on the isolated caster. Van Nan blinked at that odd style and whispered, "His moves are not trained by this game, are they?" He looked like a professionally trained fighter. Van Nan pressed her temples, recalling rumors about a player with free fighting skills. She barely drifted when Eternal's man finished the wizard, then dove back in and soon flung out another paper-thin boss. NK books. He dodges by skill. I wonder about his defense and health. Van Nan murmured. Could he be a main tank? Watch and see, the Eternal Woman smiled mysteriously. Do not just stare, help now. Van Nan raised her staff. The bosses were halfway and clashing with the tanks. Eternal's man kept moving. Strangely, the bosses chased him instead of marching on. To then swap to a lifesteal sword and, trusting his bulk, cleaved into the pack and trimmed the weak first, clearly excited. The tanks of Famous Pavilion and Sea Breeze stood firm like walls, grinding through seconds with effort. Vong Veen fired magic shots to aid Famous Pavilion. Right then the cross staff in the Eternal Woman's hands flashed white. She healed and shielded Sea Breeze's tank, topped up Great Boss, buffed agility for Eternal, then blessed all 4 tanks with plus 10 defense and plus 100 health for 1 minute. The tanks roared back to life and grew fierce. Van Nan was truly surprised. The Eternal Woman beamed. I am a professional support. No attack skills then? Vong Veen asked. No need, my teammates will protect me, she said naturally. Van Nan sighed inwardly, such pure trust, and she had not been tricked yet and was still alive, a small miracle indeed. At first Van Nan only poked with magic to observe allies and rivals, but a fresh wave spawned right then. 15 elite bosses poured in. Her face changed at once. Every 5 minutes a wave spawns, 3 cannot clear fast enough, assist now. She unleashed lightning to assist. Wherever a boss neared death, her mark appeared. Others soon noticed. A Sea Breeze player snapped. That is not helping, that is kill stealing. Van Nan replied coldly. Killing fast lowers boss count and eases tank pressure. What part is wrong? Before he could argue, she cut in sharper. Among 4 guilds your side leaves the most monsters, less talk and more focus. Eternal's tank kite cleanly and their strikers finished neatly, while Celestial Star's gear and stats let them spend mana freely. The 3 from Famous Pavilion had strong attributes and gear from past clears, and Vong Veen favored them with cover fire, so they cleared swiftly. Only Sea Breeze lacked standouts, had fewer people and average gear and stats, thus they fell behind. The Eternal Woman had burned over half her kit to prop up Sea Breeze's tank, her hands sore from heals, yet she still said coolly. If you cannot kill and refuse help, do you want others to die with you? Being weak is fine, knowing your limits matters, do not be deadweight, understood. The 3 Sea Breeze players were speechless, never called weak before. It stung, but facts were plain, with 3 per guild they were slowest. Vong Veen realized the support had chosen Sea Breeze as target, so he paced his shots, leaving bosses at awkward health so they could not finish with 1 hit, while the support could zap once and take the kill. Damn it! A Sea Breeze player swore in frustration. Assisting means finishing the target. Do you expect us to chip and gift you the kill for free? Van Nan said while casually sweeping the low health pack that Celestial Star had intentionally left for her. Chapter 75, High-Tier Secret Realm 2. On one side were unrelated strangers, on the other was the Starry Sky Guild, and the guild leader tilted the scale at once. The 3 players from Sea Wind Pavilion were speechless. The guild leader said, push a few more waves and dungeon bosses will multiply, so many you will turn pale, think long term, got it. Thus Van Nan stole mobs even harder and held nothing back. Normally one boss dropped 3 items, but with a luck buff Van Nan got 6 items for each kill. She looked at her stuffed inventory and grinned ear to ear. Seeing the support's joy and the Sea Wind faces turning green, Vong Veen guessed her gains were huge. With Van Nan's enthusiastic help 4 lanes were nearly cleared together, and the second boss wave was already upon them. She said casually, we will see, if Sea Wind cannot hold I will send Starry summons to block, yet she did not say she alone was half a main tank. Hearing that, the Eternal Guild's support relaxed. Vang Veen judged, Sea Wind is not very strong. Because of cross-guild coordination he quickly gauged all four sides. Starry's priest charged while healing and stayed safely green. Eternal's main tank was nimble, bosses could barely touch him so health loss was low. As for Sea Wind, the support spammed buffs yet only kept the bar around roughly 50%. Van Nan rubbed her chin and concluded, that Sea Wind player does not look like a professional main tank. Just then, seeing roughly 15 bosses closing in, Sea Wind's tank yelled, "Help us, our main tank died in the last faction war, I am only an off-tank." "Hey!" The other two panicked and tried to stop him. The off-tank pouted, "You two go block them, I cannot handle 15 bosses, and you were not better just now, the mobs were stolen, we had no gains, so I am being honest." The guild leader twitched his lips and understood, Sea Wind might have survived till now, but their core died and only a few mediocre players slipped in to watch the final showdown. He had asked their situation when pulling them in, and they had lied to meet the entry requirement. "Fatty, send the bear over to help." Van Nan called. "Okay." Fatty answered at once. The off-tank gladly yielded the spot to the bear and retreated to the safe zone. The other two exchanged glances, with someone blocking they could focus on damage. Right then a bolt of lightning struck near their feet. "You lied and think you can brush it off with no price." Van Nan smiled faintly. "You came to watch and forced others to end early, be honest, or you will miss the final battle." The Sea Wind woman was about to retort when a famous hall archer advised, "Please listen, angering her ends badly, she never bluffs, she acts." True or false? The woman doubted. The archer said sternly, "I heard after the last faction war she killed 6 players of the same faction in White Lac City, if you wanna be the 7th keep talking." The woman froze in place. Van Nan laughed, 6 died in the raid but not all by her, the rumor was exaggerated. Eternal's support looked at her, "I did not expect you to be that ruthless." "What can I do, I keep meeting hard heads." Van Nan shrugged helplessly, "If they behaved nothing would happen." "I do not believe it, we can stay in no damage dungeons, stay in White Lac City, books. What can she do, she stole mobs right, we can steal too, compete by strength, other things are nonsense, killed 6 in White Lac, why not kill me now?" One player sneered and provoked. Van Nan answered with strength, drew a duel card and handled him on the spot. It happened so fast the other two failed to react, and only when the system announced their teammate's death did they panic. She looked at the last two, "I repeat, behave, or you will lose the chance to reach the final battle." "What should I do?" The Sea Wind woman trembled, frightened by her decisiveness. "Deal damage hard but do not steal mobs, after the dungeon ends I will let you go." Van Nan offered terms. "Even if I want to agree it is too late." She looked at the dense monsters. Van Nan said nothing, she sacrificed 6 pieces of gear at once. Explosions roared in quick succession and most bosses fell, leaving only 2. Vang Veen used lightning and fire bullets to shave them down, and when only a sliver remained Van Nan finished them. The Sea Wind woman fell silent. She did not know whether to fear the 6 gear sacrifices or to marvel at killing 15 bosses in a blink, and she started to believe the rumor about her soloing 6 players in White Lac. "I guarantee I will finish the task." The off-tank hurried to promise. "Sea Wind is short one, I will go support." Van Nan walked straight to their safe zone. "Is she always that decisive?" Eternal's support asked the caster. The caster replied, "She picks the fastest option and pushes to the end, if others tell the truth good, if they lie they pay." The support was speechless, it sounded absurd yet reasonable. Vang Veen said calmly, "Had they not lied they would not be here, would not meet us, would not be in this mess, the more I say the more they deserve it." Van Nan led 2 Sea Wind players through the dungeon, the bear blocked mobs and efficiency soared, at least the Eternal support felt it clearly, after the swap she could relax and stop desperate buffing. The second wave had 30 bosses. Van Nan used lightning to clear for both guilds so MP dropped fast to the naked eye, yet she cared not and was happier, one boss dropped 6 items, red and blue potions nearly filled the stash, lacking MP meant drink more, just drink freely. She chugged potions non-stop, MP poured from bottle to bottle without seeming to end. The Sea Wind-off tank winced inside. What kind of monster had they provoked? Sea Wind's clear speed surged, Starry stayed strong, while Famous Hall began to struggle. Good gear and stats still failed against endless bosses, and though the guild leader had potions he was stingy. In a mock dungeon he dared not use them, so when about 1/3 remained he withdrew to the safe zone. The bosses kept increasing and classes grew more complete, control skills appeared, Eternal's main tank slipped and got bound. By the time he broke free his health was only 20%. Van Nan glanced around with slight disappointment. These people, honestly, she felt the dungeon was nearly over. The Sea Wind woman hesitated, then pointed at the guild leader. Her own health plunged while his rose. Van Nan raised a brow, a talent. Her bar turned red and she said after a breath, sacrifices my talent. I can cut my MP and HP to transfer to others, not great but useful in key moments, and she looked at Van Nan hopefully. Van Nan thought she likely did not know that killing a talented player grants a skill scroll, and that talents live dangerously, but she was too lazy to explain and asked, why did you go from full health yet the target only recovered about 30%? The woman blushed, the talent only transfers my MP and HP to others, the value does not change, I did not stack constitution so my health is low. Van Nan was speechless and found the talent a bit silly. The woman tried to persuade her more but Van Nan cut in, enough, go help Famous Hall clear, and she fired a magic round. Chapter 76, High Tier Secret Realm 3. On the Starry Heaven Guild side the mobs were cleared in a flash, then Tithan told Randok and Kovan Nak to switch over and help the Eternal Guild with the boss. No one in Eternal objected, because if the mobs were not cleared fast the instance would end early. Everyone pushed hard together. After 2 minutes the third boss wave was wiped, but before they could breathe the fourth wave arrived. So, do we keep fighting? The off-tank from Hai Phong Pavilion asked carefully. Fight. Van Nan answered crisply, these are all loot after all. She then threw 5 pieces of gear, sharply cutting down the number of bosses. Just shave the monster's HP. Van Nan said and kept dumping MP, calling lightning to blast the 5 flying bosses. Go all out. To then knew Celebrity Pavilion and Eternal could not hold much longer, so he ordered a full assault, since each killed boss was pure profit. The main tanks of Celebrity Pavilion and Eternal had fallen back to the safe zone. Eternal's female support stopped using healing skills and switched to magic bullets. Vong Veen stuck to the support, wherever she struck he mirrored with skills. Kill the mobs faster. Tu then shouted. Got it. Van Nan replied, casually tossed 2 more items, her inventory ballooned with fresh loot, yet she rushed to finish Hai Phong Pavilion's dying boss. Van Nan snapped, busy here, no extra hands, I have not even drunk the mana potion. The female player from Hai Phong Pavilion watched the girl snatch bosses everywhere and felt a strange surge of admiration, same female gamer but that aura and decisiveness were hard to match. Celebrity Pavilion and Eternal collapsed almost at the same time. When the boss stepped onto the teleport array a mechanical voice rang, instance complete, please leave within 15 minutes, overtime will auto-teleport you out. As the words ended all bosses vanished at once. Van Nan dropped to the ground gasping, she had fought for every second to snatch bosses and finally killed all bosses of Starry Heaven and Hai Phong Pavilion, she even downed 2 high-grade mana potions. With the game over she had no wish to talk, she only wanted to rest quickly. A white flash flared. Van Nan turned and found the remaining 2 players from Hai Phong Pavilion had fled. Afraid I might change my mind? Van Nan muttered, why are teammates on our camp all the same, speak calmly and they will not listen, use force and they turn honest, then bolt after the job afraid I flip, I keep my word. The big boss beside her sighed, those 2 get more and more twisted, thank goodness they are on our side. Sharpest spear and toughest shield, they are a perfect pair. The mage smiled bitterly. Pure White already had a numbers edge, with those 2 each worth 3, the victory sits in Pure White's hand. The archer chuckled, I can sleep well the remaining days. Meanwhile the Eternal members whispered among themselves. Geez, is Starry Heaven's main tank a real player, not a humanoid summon? The male archer was stunned. His teammate flicked his forehead. Idiot, he is wearing gear. Have you ever seen a summon in gear? The male archer rubbed his forehead and said solemnly, against someone absurdly strong like that, a summon in gear sounds more plausible to me. Keep talking nonsense. Another teammate glared. Kong Heng pondered and looked toward Starry Heaven's formation in the distance. Just then the female support returned and reported, guess what, I never once healed Starry Heaven's main tank, yet when the game ended his HP was around 80%, I also watched and saw his HP slowly rise while fighting, nothing like a true frontliner. I suspect he has a self-heal buff and his MP is not low. It is only a self-heal buff, our Kong Heng is not worse. The male archer objected, if you like, take it to the arena, the outcome is uncertain. The female support shot him a look, enough, hush, if you are truly confident you should say that even with a self-heal buff he would get his teeth smashed by Kong Heng. Kong Heng gazed at them helplessly, you trust me too much, even I dare not say that. Boss is unbeatable. The male archer yelled. Kong Heng stayed impassive, do not flatter me, too much praise makes you trip. The male archer drooped at once, even with unknown result the momentum should remain high. Shall we greet them now? The male archer suggested. Do that now and they might think we seek a carry. The female support sneered. Right then, rested enough, Van Nan stood, whispered to Van, and soon the two walked toward Eternal's group of 4. What do you want? Kong Heng measured them. How do we duel? Kong Heng quietly stayed alert, these two were able to kill allies in a cooperative instance. To then gave an unexpected answer, go to the arena and duel, see who drops first. Seeing the guarded look, Van Nan facepalmed, relax, before the final decisive fight we will not kill strong allies on our side, what would we gain? I am not crazy, I still want to live. Then why did you kill Hai Phong Pavilion's players earlier? The female support doubted. Because they were greedy without the strength to match, when games are unfair you must fight to decide who leads, right, if they had behaved and dropped those extra schemes I would not have bothered, I even wasted a challenge ticket. Van Nan pouted, displeasure plain. The female support wept inside, again, words that sound odd but reason that hits home. Why should I trust you too? Kong Heng remained wary. To then grumbled, we have stood before you long enough, if we wanted you dead you would be gone, why not kill straight instead of flanking and trapping? Kong Heng stayed silent. Maybe you two have run out of challenge tickets and cannot slash now. The male archer cut in. Van Nan pulled a ticket and waved it before Eternal, I have one spare, enough to chop you down. To then immediately exchanged in-game codes with Kong Heng. Is it for her skill, the gear throwing like bombing? The female support asked. Yes. Van Nan admitted. I cannot give it for free, how do you want to trade? Kong Heng asked. Van Nan smiled, potions, skill scrolls, one-time consumables, trade whatever you like. Kong Heng mused that the terms were so good they were hard to refuse. Do you have skill scrolls for a main tank? He asked. Hold on. Van Nan rummaged and found 2 scrolls, one was a passive skill that adds 3% damage with lifesteal, one was a shield of 50 HP that grants 30 HP after breaking. Both skills were very practical. Kong Heng decided at once, I will take both, the difference will be paid with potions, do you have enough? Van Nan was a bit surprised, how many gear pieces do you have? Kong Heng waved and the male archer started throwing items, rings, robes, soft armor, boots, knee pads, in a short while about 25 items piled up. Before more haggling Van Nan concluded, 50 red potions and 30 blue potions, final price. Kong Heng choked and finally asked, why not ask my price first? Van Nan answered calmly, if it is a normal price mine is surely higher, most players are broke ghosts, I think Eternal is capable so I add more potions. What if the price is not normal? Kong Heng asked. Then forget this trade. Van Nan shrugged, in truth her storage already sufficed for the last battle, she only wanted more because more is better. Deal. Kong Heng agreed, she was not rushing, and those items were idle junk, swapping for potions was profit, and boosting allies on the same side beat letting them rot. The trade finished. After exchanging resources, Eternal left the instance. To then smacked his lips and sighed. Eternal is strong, their main tank looks pro. Not only the main tank. Then Nan said, during the fight I saw that female support spam many skills yet her MP dropped only about 1/3, that shows her MP stat is very high, and she was not wearing starry gear. I suspect she has a talent. Chapter 77, Prep before the final battle. Why did you think of dueling him? Van Nan asked. To then calmly said the basic courses were all finished and he saw no other path to raise strength. When he saw that man he suddenly felt real combat experience could also push power up. What if? Van Nan hesitated. You cannot drop your guard, there are many talents in this game with complicated types and a bizarre one might pop out again. Relax. To then smiled and said he never scams others, already deserves their thanks, so how could anyone scam him? He added that if some blind fool wanted to play dirty he would cling to him and trigger holy domain, and before he fell the foe would die a few times. Van Nan laughed because it made sense as to Van's stats, gear, skills and potions meant he did not need to compare technique. While they chatted, Big Boss came to hand over spare gear to Van Nan. No need to give that much. Big Boss tried to refuse. Take it. Van Nan said casually that too many potions would not be drunk and keeping them was useless. Earlier she strained herself against the boss and cut down about 60 of them, converting to roughly 720 items, so her bag was crammed with all sorts and nearly full. She then took out more than 30 pieces of gear and said their stats were solid, so check what could replace. Big Boss hurried to call teammates and after some picking, the 3 from Famous Pavilion looked much shinier. Van Nan gathered the leftovers and stored them. After the trade, to them nodded to Big Boss and said since the dungeon was cleared they would head out first and meet again in the final showdown. With that, Guild Star Heaven left the instance. The mage wore a strange look and said he suddenly felt kept like a pampered pet. At the diner the 5 from Guild Star Heaven regrouped. Van Nan started gifting and told Fatty to take 3 skill scrolls consisting of melee, silver wolf, water giant shooting arrows and fire element casting fireballs. Fatty used them while lamenting that they arrived now, so there was no time to level the summons. It still boosts our damage. Wang Veen comforted. For to then she said 2 scrolls were given to the main tank of Guild Eternal as 1 share and 1 share was kept for him to take. After using them, to then complained that at least around 500 drops fell yet only 2 scrolls were usable. Van Nan explained that skill scrolls were many but good ones were few, then asked if he could use this and handed 1 more. To then read that heavy slash dealt 5 damage plus strength attribute plus weapon base and each cast cost 4 MP. Then his face darkened and he flicked the scroll away, calling it trash. Van Nan pointed out it was not the lack of scrolls but his picky eyes. You have bad loot hands. To then shot back. Van Nan curled her lip and said how could an African chieftain like you mock someone else's bad hands? To then fell silent. She turned and handed 3 scrolls to the archer, namely Ice Arrow with high damage and a tiny area freeze for 2 seconds, Quick Shot as a passive that sped up attacks, and Corrode as a passive that added poison for 3 seconds. Ko Van Nak happily accepted. Lastly she gave the Warlock 1 Corrode and 1 Thrift, explaining Thrift was a passive that cut 1 MP from each skill cast. Wang Veen stared at Thrift a bit speechless. Van Nan soothed that saving 1 MP was still saving since Mage was a rich MP hungry class and shaving a little each cast added up to a few more spells. Wang Veen thought it was truly saving a little. What about you? Tu then asked. I have luck and sacrifice, so I need no more skills. Van Nan smiled and said her bag held around 200 pieces of gear and if she dumped them all, Dark Deep would surely lose. Good thing I am on pure white. Fatty sighed in relief. Everyone keep 100 points for living costs and transfer the rest to me. Van Nan said. Tu then understood and asked if she would craft more mid-grade potions. High grade. Van Nan said decisively, because low grade. Worked too poorly to drink in time. The group obliged and transferred points. Van Nan began brewing and soon produced 5 high-grade blue potions and 8 high-grade red potions. Fatty said he needed none since the mid-grade from last time were unused and he was safe and not worried about MP. Beaten to the punch by Fatty, Van Nack quickly said he also needed none because each high-grade blue restored 300 MP while his max MP was lower. After thinking, Van Nan gave the archer 3 mid-grade blues, saying they fit better and that he should not skimp on MP at key moments. Van Nack nodded and stored them. To then decided to split blues as 2 for the warlock, 2 for support and 1 for him. The 2 nodded. Wang Vien volunteered to take 1 and let the other 2 divide the rest. To then agreed readily and finally handed 1 high-grade red to the warlock, 1 to Van Nan, and kept 6 himself. Anything else? If not, we will head out. With business done, Wang Vien excused himself, knowing the 2 leaders needed a private talk. As you wish. Before the final showdown, just run the secret realm once more. Van Nan answered. The 3 left the diner. To then probed if there was anything left and told her to bring it all out. He glanced at a skill scroll and read that Power of Nature was a passive, giving plus 50 HP in recovery at 1.5 times. There are 2 scrolls, I already used one. Van Nan sipped tea and asked how to split the potions. You take 3 blues and 2 reds. To then suggested. Store them first and decide by the situation. To then said after thinking. He then raised another topic, asking her thoughts on the recent battle. Others were average, and in the final we must assign people to each lane properly. Van Nan spoke as her thoughts tangled. Famous Pavilion and Guild Star Heaven each block 1 lane, as we know each other well, and even if I steal their mobs they know why, so no civil war on the spot. Each lane should be led by a reliable team to avoid needless mistakes. I found that the inlaid crystal combo and arrow towers only lasted 5 minutes, which means each fresh wave required new crystals. Just now it was a simulation instance, so we did not waste resources, and I was in a hurry, so I did not reinstall. The result of the final will hinge on which of the 4 lanes falls first, and if teammates slip at crunch time, the rest being strong is useless. Frankly, she felt uneasy putting her little life in strangers' hands. Don? To then finished jotting and looked up. That is all for now. Then my turn. To then became solemn. First, Pure White had 29 members and now only 28 with 4 lanes, so that would be 7 per lane. By your analysis, Guild Star Heaven is stronger, so 4 to 5 people suffice to hold 1 lane, and with 3 from Famous Pavilion we could secure 2 lanes. Right, exactly. Van Nan nodded and calculated that 8 people guard 2 lanes, and the other 2 lanes each have 10, including the 3 from Truong Fong and Guild Eternal, which should be fine. Here is where we differ. To then's eyes darkened and he made a shocking decision, saying 3 warlocks and the 3 from Truong Fong plus Red Robe form 1 team, 3 from Famous Pavilion with Guild Eternal form 1 team, and the remaining 2 lanes will be watched separately by you and me. Van Nan touched her chin and asked if that meant they would control the whole instance. Correct. To then answered naturally and said Big Boss with Guild Eternal made a 2 tank team. The Bear and Horse of Fatty and Thiat Dao were also 2 tanks, and he alone could hold the boss without swaps. What about me and the other lane, who tanks? Van Nan froze. To then gave a cold smile and said they would use rock mobs to block the path, gather them and throw gear, because she did not really need a tank. In a few days we can sweep the mid-grade secret realm again, and if we pick up warrior gear, all the better to fully arm Big Boss. He added that since her stash had lots of gear, it was best to find Truong Fong's squad and arm them too. Van Nan curled her lip and said Pure White had only 28 people left, yet the supplies in her hand were enough for every survivor to regear once more. I know we must think of the big picture, but why do I still feel so uncomfortable inside? To then muttered that after grinding so hard to build his hoard, he still had to share it out. What else can we do? Van Nan glared and reminded him this was a team war and they fought by combined strength. To then sighed that this was why he disliked teamwork games, and that personal power matches were simpler and handier, and every time he partied he ended up the hard carry to the point of coughing blood. Van Nan kept silent because she honestly felt the same. Chapter 78, Preparing before the final battle 2. Kong Hang was already waiting inside and looked a little surprised to see Tushin arrive alone. You really want a beating, he said with contempt. Kong Heng believed a professional would easily beat an amateur and higher attributes meant nothing if you failed to hit the target. Tushin replied seriously, only real combat improves fighting skills. Let me introduce myself, I am a priest. Kong Heng, the other answered with a strange look upon hearing his title. He continued, the legendary priest, and the female mage with you. She is a support, Tushin said indifferently. Kong Heng gaped. He had heard rumors about the two being ferocious, and the rumors matched reality. If there's nothing else, shall we start? Tushin took the initiative to step onto the arena. Kong Heng straightened and followed him up, thinking he must teach the priest a lesson. The duel began. Kong Heng lunged and threw a kick. Tushin reacted quickly and raised his arm to block and protect the vital area. Kong Heng was slightly surprised and murmured, he blocked that, the basic training is decent. He then smiled and pressed the attack since the training ground only offered basic programs. Kong Heng moved closer, threw a hook, tried to provoke a counter elbow, seized the arm and tossed the opponent to the ground. The seamless motion showcased Kong Heng's high practical combat ability. Tushin rose slowly and said, TCH, a true professional, hard to deal with. Kong Heng's stats showed 20 strength and 12 agility, his strikes were fast and brutal. Those moves seemed ordinary but were actually 3 linked skills. Theoretically the victim would lose half their HP, yet Tushin remained fine, clear-headed, with his HP still green. I knew I couldn't avoid it, so I used a defensive skill, Tushin explained. After using Stone Skin, incoming damage is reduced to 1/3. Kong Heng was speechless, he couldn't fathom how someone could cut damage by 2/3. Suddenly a freezing effect appeared. Kong Heng knew something was wrong but it was too late and he couldn't move. The killing blow struck and Kong Heng's HP dropped sharply. Tushin smoothly swept his Tin Tien sword across Kong Heng's neck, delivering a minor attack with a critical hit. The blade flashed cold, reflecting Kong Heng's pale face. Once he moved again, he retreated several steps, panting and fearful. Tushin did not chase and stood pensively. Your defense and HP are average, it seems you rely on evasion. Kong Heng grumbled that he thought players developed evenly like he did, but high defense and high offense made it impossible for others to survive. Tushin sheathed his sword, a few more hits and you'll be out, better not wield a sword. Come on. Kong Heng inhaled deeply and resolved to be ruthless. They traded blows and kicks back and forth. After a while Kong Heng sadly realized the attribute gap was too wide. He hit the priest many times but the opponent was indifferent, HP remained green and recovered quickly, whereas when Kong Heng was struck his HP plummeted. Tushin sat down, take a break, we'll continue soon. No more, Kong Heng snapped. He had used all his strength but the other remained apathetic and it drove him to despair. Kong Heng wanted to curse, if not for that, he would have beaten the priest already. Can't beat you. I give up. Not playing. Kong Heng shouted. Tushin frowned, I let you hit me like a punching bag, what are you still annoyed about? Kong Heng snorted, resentful that after a long fight he was the one covered in wounds while the wall-like opponent stood untouched. Tushin threatened, if you refuse, bad things will happen. Kong Heng stiffened and warned, if I recall, someone once said killing strong teammates before the final battle is the act of a madman? Oh? I don't quite remember. Tushin stayed calm. Kong Heng wanted to curse. Tushin looked at him innocently, I finished basic training and want to improve my combat ability. Can you switch to someone else? Kong Heng asked. Tushin spread his hands helplessly, besides you, is there anyone else in our squad who's professional? I haven't heard of anyone. Can you recommend someone? Kong Heng was at a loss for words. Are you busy? Tushin probed. No, Kong Heng honestly replied, the fight was no pleasure for him. Then why rush out? Tushin continued, my strength increasing helps the whole squad, you're part of Pure White Regiment, shouldn't you help comrade? Kong Heng fell silent for a long time then said with an emotionless face, your talent for excuses really is top in the regiment. Not at all, Tushin replied modestly. Elsewhere, Van Nan stood by the roadside thinking the dungeon system wouldn't give players much time to negotiate tactics, and distributing players and switching equipment would be hectic. She wondered how to contact surviving members of pure white regiments, since street stalls or billboards might not reach everyone. At that moment a machine voice announced, "Player used 100 points to send a message to all players of pure white regiment." Van Nan smiled. Minutes later all members received a message: "Within 3 days from today, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., the Tin Tien Guild will set up a stall at the training ground for equipment exchange and free distribution of skill scrolls, limited strong gear, first come first served." Many players were tempted upon receiving this. Tin Tien Guild. Tank support Hai Fong Kak looked conflicted. "If we go, is it dangerous?" Archer Dan Nan Kak remarked, "Where there's fat there's grease." Luckily they're fellow regiment players. He asked whether they needed to go since they had just swapped gear when finishing the dungeon. Hong Yi received the message and headed to the training ground. Van Nan opened her stall lazily and displayed 50 of the best items and 70 or 80 skill scrolls scattered around. Hong Yi arrived first and asked, "How to trade?" "1 for 1, take what you like and leave the old gear on the ground," Van Nan answered lazily. "Take any skill scroll you want." Hong Yi happily picked the quick attack skill and used it immediately. 3 players hurriedly approached Van Nan's spot. One asked, "Is Tin Tien Guild selling here?" "Yes," Van Nan nodded. They asked about the exchange rules again and one muttered, puzzled why unwanted gear must be given to her. After checking the invitation card, he inhaled sharply and backtracked, "Actually I only asked casually, it's fine if you don't answer." I know, I'm just showing the invitation," Van Nan smiled, reminding them to choose quickly since first come first served. Hong Yi said she wanted 3 pieces, 7 items in total changed hands, and left cheerfully saying, "Call me if you need anything." The 3 glanced at each other and found no danger. "If you like it trade, if not move on, don't just stand there," Van Nan calmly warned. While they talked 2 more people came asking about gear and scrolls, and Van Nan repeated the rules. The first 3 squatted to pick quickly, the other 2 hurried to join them. A greedier player asked if there were better items. Van Nan glanced at him, "These are already decent, don't be greedy." He sneered. Van Nan smiled faintly, "If you dare take gear and run right in front of me, you won't last a minute." Misunderstanding, the male mage forced a smile, then hurriedly threw in used gear to Van Nan and ran off. Van Nan asked the female archer who came with him, "How do you pick teammates, stupid?" The archer answered seriously, "Stupid is good, they won't betray." Van Nan chuckled and found the remark sensible. "But sometimes it's unavoidable," the archer sighed. "If a player can pull out more than 50 decent items at once, their brain must be eaten by zombies." She paused, then asked if unused gear could be used for crafting and offered to take them for a primary hidden scroll crafting book. Van Nan refused. "No, I need those items, they have a use," and showed her the sacrifice skill. "No wonder you want to gather gear," the archer realized. Round pushpin: if an error appears, pin it and everyone will see it immediately. Chapter 79, The Final Showdown, Part 1. All around Van Nan clustered more than 20 players, and counting Starry Heaven Guild members she had met almost every survivor of the pure white camp. "There are too few tanks." Van Nan rubbed her chin and pondered, "Either few chose the tank class at the start, or it is too dangerous so most have died, but luckily a few excellent tanks remain, which is barely enough." She shook her head, stopped overthinking, packed up the stall, and left. Before the last showdown, Starry Heaven and Celebrity Pavilion teamed up to clear the secret realm one last time. After the run, Kovan Nak swiftly took off his robe and switched to a marksman's light armor, sighing inside that he had finally gathered 6 pieces of the Starry Heaven set. The 3 leaders were about to hand in the Starry Heaven gear when to then stop them, keep them, and arm the great leader as well. As he spoke he tossed the Starry Heaven armor to the great leader, then glanced at Van Nan with a smug grin as if to flaunt his lucky drops. "What are you proud of? Your luck benefits others." Van Nan teased coolly, "In other words, that is true unluckiness." The great leader was flattered and hurried to gear up, yet after dressing he fretted, 2 rings are still missing. "Then take mine." Fatty offered, smiling naively, I do little anyway, my summons do the fighting. To then thought a moment and nodded, give the ring pair to the great leader, pass other items to the mage, and you can throw on whatever. The archer fell speechless. His teammates had evolved from bird guns into cannons, and only he lagged behind, which showed how crucial class choice was. Van Nan explained her plan to the great leader. He considered briefly and nodded, each of the 4 lanes will be controlled by familiar hands, which is ideal. What about Eternal Guild? Van Nan asked. I spoke with Kong Hang and he agreed. To then answered plainly. When swapping gear I met the Chang Feng trio, and they agreed too. Van Nan smiled, if more than half of our camp sees no issue then we lock it in. As if they would dare refuse. To then muttered, defy us and they might not even enter the final showdown. Van Nan pretended not to hear, everything is prepared, we now await the last battle. The great leader sighed, I feel the pure white camp cannot lose, because their preparation was thorough. In a blink the camp war day arrived, and the pure white players met again inside the instance. Some scanned the map and marveled that it formed across, others smiled at the Black Watch, final showdown quest, before the enemy camp fails do not let any monster pass the teleport array, on completion all remaining players of the camp win and may revive. In this instance friendly fire is disabled within a camp, and cross-camp attacks are also forbidden, have fun players. Alright, work the plan. Van Nan clapped. People still looked dazed. Celebrity Pavilion and Eternal Guild headed to the bottom lane, while the Chang Feng trio moved to the right lane where 3 Starry Heaven Juniors waited. Why split people like this? Someone asked in confusion. To then glanced over with a crooked smile, because we said it so, if you do not wish to die then line up. The man gaped speechless. To then pouted, showed his stats, gear info, and challenge card, then said low, reaching the last showdown was hard, do not die from stubbornness, obey orders, work together, and we all revive. Seeing the rest turn obedient, To then told his allies, you pick first. Van Nan stepped up without ceremony, anyone a tank. All shook their heads. The off-tank of Sea Breeze Guild wanted to do the same yet had been identified earlier, so he admitted grudgingly, I am an off-tank. Stand by me. Van Nan beckoned. The off-tank trudged out reluctantly. The other Sea Breeze woman was about to follow when Van Nan said, hold on. The woman stiffened, feeling snubbed and uneasy. Who has a summon or a summoning skill? Van Nan continued. NK Books. The traitor. Markswoman from the dark camp stepped out bitterly because she had a water giant. Aside from her no one moved. Van Nan waited and decided, the rest of Sea Breeze and Hong Yi, come here. Done choosing. To then raised a brow, with Van Nan included her squad had only 5 people. The rest are yours, I am here anyway. Van Nan said with a smile. To then laughed as well, for with Van Nan around he could relax. Move out, he called, and the others followed. To then's group of 10 took top lane at the first right angle of the safe zone. The 7 of Eternal Celebrity took bottom lane at the third right angle of the safe zone. The 6 of Chang Feng plus 5 of Fatty's summons took right lane at the fourth right angle of the safe zone. Are you planning to perish together with someone from Pure White? The traitor markswoman asked darkly, feeling the squad allocation was flawed. We have no main tank and too few numbers, as if gifting victory to the other side. Strongest. Van Nan smirked, you heard it, I am the strongest, with me it is enough. Strongest, what bragging, the markswoman cursed inside. Call me support. Van Nan said, then looked at her team, introduce yourselves so we can address each other later. I am Aquarius Archer, call me Bao Bin. The traitor pursed her lips and thought that if Pure White lost she would spend her only challenge card on support no matter what. Nam San. Back to you. The 2 from Sea Breeze spoke together. Van Nan blinked, a matched pair of names. No, Nam San shook her head, our guild has 4 people and we were named for east west south north. Back 2 drooped, Great One, you saw last instance, I cannot block monsters, could we call a main tank here? No need. Van Nan replied, which nearly drove him mad. She ignored his panic and pressed on. Next, report your talents. Hong-yi said, higher hit rate. Nam-san yielded, as I said, I can transfer health and mana to others. Baek-tu added helplessly, health plus 50. Hong-yi shot him a look. What kind of talent is that, barely stronger than none? Baek-tu looked up, still counts as a talent. Van Nan rubbed her chin and asked Nam-san, any limits on transferring health and mana? When health and mana drop below 20%, the talent stops working. Nam-san answered honestly. An idea sprouted in Van Nan's mind. Right then Nam-san pointed and cried, look over there, what is that? Van Nan followed her finger and saw on the dark side a line of 10 summons, and the number still grew. From afar it was an army of summons. Van Nan had believed pure white held absolute advantage and fell silent. Shui Bin's voice sounded, if I had not met you and lost in the camp war I would have saved my betrayal card for the final showdown. Though pure white has more players I do not dare assume they will win, because the dark side has the famed tough player Deep Abyss. He is a summoner and has acted abnormal from the start. He even has 2 talents and both are strong. One talent fixes the drop after killing monsters. The other uses a summoning scroll as a medium to call a summon that lasts until the instance ends, and every summon is tier 4. No one provokes him because no one knows how many scrolls he hides. So he is a whale player, a scroll-throwing specialist then. Van Nan murmured. Just picturing his summon army makes me shake. Bao Bin lamented. Van Nan soothed her, do not fear, summons do not have infinite health and mana, once they run dry it is over. The number still rose, and when it stopped the dark side had gained 20 more summons. Thus pure white had 28 players with 6 summons, while dark had 19 players with 20 summons, and the headcount had flipped. To think we schemed for so long yet we still entered a bad position at the end. Van Nan sighed that life is fickle and the road always bends. How are we supposed to fight like this? Nam-san groaned. Van Nan cut her a glance, you all just focus on attacking and leave the rest to me. Back to you. Suddenly spoke, I have a betrayal card on me, do you think I should use it on that summoner, for turning the toughest foe into an ally of pure white would mean a near certain victory. Chapter 80, The Final Decisive Battle 2. Baetu rolled his eyes and said, where else could it come from, a drop from monsters, I felt it was unnecessary so I tossed it in a corner the moment I picked it up. To make the summoner defect, not a bad idea. Van Nan nodded with mild praise. Baetu grinned but Van Nan fired questions, how will you do it, how will you hand him the card, how can you be sure he will use it at once, if he clings to the dark camp and only switches when defeat is certain will you not be furious? Baetu was speechless because if the other side refused the card and only turned when loss was sure it would be maddening. So the idea is good yet not feasible. Van Nan spread her hands. Baetu pondered then asked, should I use the card on him right now to see if he will change sides? What if he will not, then the card is wasted. Van Nan flicked back. Bao Bin sneered, I have never heard a betrayal card can be used on someone else. Then stop overthinking and meet force with force. Hong Wei said firmly and braced. Not only brute force. Van Nan murmured and instantly used a duel card on Tam Yuyan because slaying the player would collapse the summoned beasts. A mechanical chime confirmed the duel card was valid. Your partner used a duel card on player 9467. At the instant of the notice to then reacted and cast Thunderbolt at the target. The foe hid behind beasts and retreated to extend range with veteran poise. Use Berserk. To then prompted. The target is too far beyond Berserk range. Van Nan shouted, if you cannot kill the player then kill the summons. To then froze a beat then grasped that culling beasts would also weaken the enemy. He switched targets and among the dense herd he focused on low health glass cannons. Damn it! Tam Yuyan backed far away and cursed when his herd melted fast. He tried to order the beasts to keep distance but teammates blocked him. The bosses are about to spawn so do not retreat or no one will hold the mobs. If some beasts die the enemy will spend much mana and must pause. Right, once the bosses approach they cannot focus fire the beasts. NK Books. Tam Yuyan raged fools, the pure white side already outnumbers us, without my many summons we would surrender. Summons are weaker than players so only numbers can bridge the gap, if too many die we alone cannot last to the end. Got it, then go protect the beasts. The crowd mumbled assent yet stood still since stepping into enemy range risked a dual tag in death before the camp battle ended. Useless rice buckets. Tam Yuyan roared in fury. While they bickered the herd kept shrinking and in a blink only 8 were left. Hey, we only refused to save your beasts so why curse us? Someone snapped. There are still 8 so we can fight. Another spoke with naive optimism. They spent lots of mana and the 2 main attackers must ease up so we still hold advantage. A third tried to sound objective. At once Van Nan and To then calmly drank high-grade elixirs and their mana bars filled to the brim. The dark players fell silent. Trash, I am out. Tam Yuyan threw a card to another then used his last one himself. Betrayal card, after use the player switches camp, note each player can only use it once, please confirm immediate use. Yes confirm, let me go now, I cannot take it. He almost went mad. The system confirmed and white light flashed as Tam Yuyan and 8 beasts appeared in pure white. Another also used a card and arrived. Did you not say try your best and only use the betrayal card as last resort? The newcomer sighed. Try my ass, low skill and disobedient to orders, let them die, the thin edge I built was broken within less than 3 minutes, why stay with idiots? Bobbin smiled. Tam Yuyan and Tuet can are top experts of the dark camp. She paused then blurted, I did not expect you both to have betrayal cards. He has a talent to designate items so if he meets it he will mark it. Van Nan smiled. Heroin, you hit too hard. Tam Yuyan winced at his few. Beasts laughed. Without hard hits would you have switched so fast? Van Nan countered and he choked. The bosses appeared and had walked 1/3 of the road when Van Nan ordered, we lack a main tank so send the summons to block. Though reluctant he obeyed since he had switched sides. The bosses jammed the path and as others prepared to strike Van Nan casually tossed 8 pieces of gear and the bosses vanished in an instant. Tam Yuyan was dumbstruck and Tuet can also fell mute. On the dark side people gaped as the 2 experts left with ease. Ordinary players never knew betrayal cards existed and thought even without obeying orders their lives were bound together so the experts could not leave, yet they left and the beasts followed. Their strength plunged while the foe gained wings. You did not obey orders so blame yourselves, had you obeyed maybe he would stay. One sneered. The speaker smirked, I disobeyed yet I have a card, I will not wait here to die. He vanished at once. The rest were stunned. Attack now, the bosses are here. Someone yelled. The dark side went crazy because card holders were gone and no beasts remained, 2 lanes lacked people badly so bosses could not be stopped. Regret came too late. Van Nan kept Tam Yuyan and his beasts to hold a lane and sent 2 others to assist elsewhere. Tam Yuyan scoffed, without a blade at the throat they never grasped severity, when defeat looms they will admit I am right but it is useless. Oh. He still doubted. I have over 200 pieces of gear in total. Van Nan said flatly. He fell silent since over 200 sounded terrifying. Luck also favors pure white. Van Nan chatted. The betrayal cards ended up with dark experts and they used them at the start which saved us much effort, had others held the cards both sides would have brawled much longer. Though praised he felt no joy because the image of her stash gave him chills. Now we only wait for dark to collapse so bosses pass the teleport array. She watched leisurely and sometimes flicked 1 or 2 items to other lanes. When she saw Kong Hang's health dropping she pulled Nam San aside, shoved 10 red potions into her hand and ordered drink and then transfer health to the main tank. Nam San froze. Van Nan explained, that is exactly how your gift works, main tanks are crucial and have no time to drink so you drink and pass it over. She patted her shoulder. Health to Kong Hang and mana to the priest, you can do it, go. Nam San cried inside for being turned into a mobile pharmacy. Tam Yuyan fumed as he looked at the new teammates then at the old ones and felt the gap, those who read the situation obeyed, yet his former team always acted on whim, and he did not know that earlier Van Nan had used force to make players obedient. After the first wave, Dark barely coped in grief-clouded faces. Van Nan watched long, then picked fitting targets and happily used duel cards. 2 cards later, 2 Dark players vanished and numbers fell again. A marksman snapped and hurled his bow. They have 32 and we have 14. What are we even doing? Let the bosses pass, a quick death is mercy. A man beside him spoke bitterly. 14 people and not even 4 main tanks, so rotations fail. I quit, death is death, we have died already, so why fear? After 18 years I will be a hero again. The marksman roared. Morale shattered and will to fight evaporated, which perfectly described the dark side. When the second wave spawned, the marksman folded his arms and stared blankly. As a boss stepped into the teleport array, a chime rang. Game over. Congratulations to Pure White for the final victory. After 15 minutes, all remaining Pure White players will leave the game and revive in reality. At once every boss in the dungeon vanished and Dark players turned into white light. The dull system voice now sounded like heavenly music and the survivors cheered. It finally ended. Hong Wai muttered in relief. We won, we truly won. Nam San whispered as tears burst out. Tam Yuyan looked complicated. Tiskai had planned to lead Dark to the final win. Van Nan was elated yet kept a calm face and declared proudly, with me here our side will win. Just then Mapko Van Nak and Vang Veen rushed over and shouted, Boss, did you hear? We won. Yeah, we won, now we wait to revive. To then came with a smile and bright eyes. At last we won. Map bawled with snot and tears, I thought I would die halfway. Spineless. Ko Van Nak patted his shoulder with disdain. NK Books. You are crying too. Map turned with wet eyes. No, you are seeing things. Ko Van Nak denied. Vang Veen looked at the 3 remaining of Renowned Hall in the distance and felt a twinge of sorrow, yet was glad to live. After some joking, Map leaned in. The game is over, so tell us your real name, boss. Later we can meet in reality since we went through life and death together. To then was unconcerned because his family runs big business and he does not fear revenge. I am to then living and working in City A. The Indan Mall in City A is nominally owned by my family. When free you are welcome, he said breezily. City A. Van Nan memorized it and silently blacklisted it, thinking she would never set foot there. And you? Map's eyes shone at Van Nan. I am Van Nan in City B and a normal office worker. She was far colder than to then. Do not contact me without cause, treat the game like a dream. I am Vong Fu Kui. Map said a very common name that stunned all. Ko Van Nak glanced sideways, for he never expected Map to be a rich second generation. Misunderstanding. Map rushed to explain, I live thanks to the boss, so I hope to help him in reality and repay the favor. Van Nan shook her head coolly, no need, later do not contact me, even if we meet pretend to be strangers, do not give me special care. Map felt wronged as his goodwill was skewed. He thought a bit, then told the rest, if you need jobs come to City B to find me, my family runs real estate and the tallest building in the city is ours, so getting you good work is fine. The guildmates of Starry Sky were kind, so he was moved and made a generous promise. Ko Van Nak joked, if I travel to City B I will find you to extort. Van Nan stiffened because the tallest building in City B belonged to her company. Could Map be the director's son? She grew solemn and considered moving to another city to start anew. While they chatted, 15 minutes passed and everyone vanished at once. Map still called out, contact me if you need anything.